Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Chris George Zuger, and you have entered the Den of Lore. This is our 40th episode. This is June 1st, 2017, and we have, it's Throwback Month. We're going with the themes, and boy, do we have a treat for you. What ended up starting out as a disaster a couple days ago, where our guest, a guest that was supposed to be here tonight, Edward Nightingale, he is currently, believe it or not, out in the middle of the Arizona desert with Graham Hancock, Gary A. David, and Randall Carlson. They're filming at a Clovis site, so he's like, I have no cell signal where I am. I'd love to do it, but apparently it's worse out there than he thought. Ed, stay strong. Again, have some fun, come back to us safe and sound, and thank you very much. Now, in his stead, we have another esteemed Den of Lore, I'm going to say guest alum, Mr. John Michael Greer himself. And, of course, not across the desk from me because I am in the studio solo. Because Mr. Big Sexy Alex himself notified me about 40 minutes before the show started that I originally had scheduled for tomorrow. So he thought it was tomorrow. So, oops, my bad. Again, if you would like to be an intern for the show, apply at info@denoflore.com. Although, virtual Big Sexy Alex is here with me via Skype. Say hello, Big Sexy.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you doing today, Big Sexy?
Good.
See, you're like not in the studio, so I can say it as much as you want. You can't hit me, so I'm good.
This is true.
Now, I know that for our show, we sometimes do an opening segment and we sometimes don't. Now, I was going to do an opening segment to comment on the recent drama that's been happening at or after Contact in the Desert. I'm not sure exactly why. I don't have all the details. We here in the Den of Lore do not necessarily stoop to such childishness. Well, essentially there is a group within the UFO and exopolitics community who, Alex and I would term them the batshit insane division. And then you have pretty much, everyone else. People who just like to have fun and who enjoy the togetherness, the community, who appreciate the fact that even if we don't agree with the theories that are out there or, we just don't like it, we still at least try and act civilly and we try and have some fun while still trying to search for the truth because, we all want to uncover the truth behind that big lie, as the great Jimmy Church says. So, basically, the best way to be able to put it is, from my perspective, that it is the people, and this is all based around the what's the term? Oh, for crying out loud. Cosmic disclosure. We've talked about it on the show before a couple times, again with Corey Good and David Wilcock. Again, I've already expressed my views as far as what I think of the theories, although as far as the gentlemen themselves, they're good, honest, hardworking people. There's a group out there that is savagely attacking them. Anything from racial slurs to, what I was going to read out today was essentially this massive run-on sentence with multiple uses of Satanism being accused. I believe David Wilcock's name was spelled David, WILC-COCK, which I believe is very disrespectful, and essentially using a shit ton of fear and baseless lies to try and slander some people who, even if I don't agree with the direction that they're taking it, at the end of the day, they're good people. And, you've got some people with some questionable theories and concepts, which, I don't know if they're true or not, but I know that they're at least presenting them in a way that people can get behind. And then you've got, on the other hand, the irrational fanatics, whom I make fun of and lampoon on the show on a daily basis. And I always will lampoon them on the show on a daily basis because at the end of the day, we here, especially in the Den of Lore, as long as you got your glass of scotch, your big sexy next to you, or virtually next to you, and you can at least have a discussion about stuff, even if you don't agree with it. We still come here with the knowledge and want to love and to learn and to, I don't know, like raise a dram every now and again. So I'm not going to name any people out because I don't want to get sued. But to those who are out there, if you are in the business of fear, if you are in the business of trying to sell books and ideas and concepts and clicks to your website, and you use nothing but, like, not even fear from UFOs, fear from aliens, as well as mixing in the baseless fears from the worst parts of faith and religion, which is supposed to be something of a system of morality at least, then get fucked. Seriously. I don't give a shit how many followers you have or how many views you get. And if you're a YouTube podcast that can essentially get 100 times more views than I can, putting on a suit and lying to the fucking camera because you are some, hotshot shill, or, you actually believe the shit that you shovel out of your show, well, then honestly go fuck yourself. Straight up. I really couldn't care. If you are going to attack hardworking people who haven't done anything to you except for say something you've disagreed with, you're just punching up and way out of your league. Way out of your league. And this community has a way of including people and appreciating people, and even for myself, I'm a nobody from fucking Ottawa, Canada. Like, this is the backwoods compared to LA. And even if I don't agree with people, they're still saying, like, you're running a show, you talk and you care about what we actually are saying. At least you're willing to listen, and even if you don't agree, you're still a pretty good guy. And like, it just pisses me off. It really pisses me off. And like, especially since, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. About a week ago, for saying that I was a Freemason, I was accused of being a devil worshipper. Now, everyone knows the troll that I am, so yeah, I spent a good day fucking with this person because it's just really fun. You can't convince these people otherwise, and I tried, trust me. It didn't go to that, so I'm like, okay, I'll just run with it. See if I can convince him that he's actually the Satan worshiper and let him question his life, for the rest of his days, or at least for the rest of the afternoon. But it's this baseless fear. And fuck it. Like, seriously. So for the person that you are, if you want to hide behind a microphone, like, at least the difference is if I disagree with somebody, I'll fucking invite them on the show and I'll tell them to their face. Because at least for that, it opens up it opens up conversation. You're hiding behind a goddamn camera. So come on the Den of Lore. See how long you last, because I will tear you a goddamn new one. You goddamn disrespectful sons of bitches. Fuck. Okay, I'm done. Sorry, guys. Now I can actually open up.
You feel better?
I actually do. It just grinds my gears. Like, it's like the. Like, I've been in I've been in the rave scene, I've been in the club scene, and there's a lot of politics that are involved, and it's a very close-knit community here in Ottawa. And, you can see groups of friends or communities kind of splinter or shatter based on somebody doesn't like somebody else, so they're going to make up a bunch of lies and shit. It fragments an entire community. The alternate history, UFO, alien abduction, and conspiracy community. And again, even for myself, there's always fringes in any group, but this is the type of group that can still shatter. Like, it's large enough that it could survive. But if somebody did something wrong, they're going to be like, well, I'm going to use my influence to be able to hurt this person, hurt their business. That's just wrong. Like, that's not cool. So, yeah, I'm good now. So, tonight on the show, we have a very, very special guest. You may recognize him from one of our earlier episodes, and one of the most fun ones, especially as we actually got to tell a bunch of Freemason jokes back and forth that mostly Freemasons would really get. And he taught us the lost secrets of Freemasonry, which is one of the greatest books that I've read. It connected so many dots for me. Is John Michael Greer, who is well, a fellow Freemason. He's also a former Grand Archdruid, and I know the last time I did not get the best. I did not get the best. What's the term? Bio. Now I took this one right from Wikipedia and I altered it, so hopefully this works. John Michael Greer is an American author who writes on the environment, various religions, and occult topics. He served from December 2003 to December 2015 as the Grand Archdruid of the Ancient Order of Druids in America. And since then, he has focused on the Druidical Order of the Golden Dawn, which he founded in 2013. Writing in the Futurist magazine, Rick Doxai, I believe, sorry. I always get one name that I mispronounce. Declared the Greer's book, The Esoteric Future, that is a realistic portrayal of the end of civilization as one is likely to find. It was also positively reviewed in Choice Current Reviews for academic libraries and was recommended in the industry journal Energy Policy. The International Journal of Agricultural Sustainability referred to this book, The Wealth of Nature, as challenging the paradigms that underlie the complex system of wealth distribution we know as economics. And his book, The New Encyclopedia of the Occult, was selected as a reference text in 2005 by American Liberties and noted by Booklist and Publishers Weekly. And today on the program, we are going to be learning about two of his works that are coming out and continue our discussion on esotericism, which is his recent book on and please correct me if I get this right, or get this wrong, I should say, Coelbern Alphabet, as well as a recent book he did a translation for, which is The Academy of the Sword, which is essentially a guide to Western martial arts-based sword fighting from the Renaissance, which I thought was just absolutely cool. Brother Greer, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
And,
pleasure to be on again.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you. Again, excuse me for the rant. It's just...
No, these things happen, okay? Not just the rant. That kind of nonsense in a community. Every community that I've been involved in, whether it's Druidry, whether it's the occult scene, whether it's some of the other alternative thoughts, you get these people who decide they can, their way of building a little empire is by dragging other people down. And, you got to call them for what they are, and then, basically the people who aren't going to sit still for that can simply turn their backs, walk away, go do some, raise a beer together and shut them out.
And that's
we've had this,
yeah. Like it's even for myself, for somebody who was bullied for so much when he was a teenager, it's sad.
Oh, me too.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went through the same kind of thing when I was a kid, all through public schools, and my reaction to it has mellowed. From the point of wanting to stake them out on live anthills to the point of simply wanting, to arrange for public humiliation. The latter is usually easier to arrange because most of these people are really buffoons. And if you simply point that out and and give them opportunities to make fools of themselves, hey, life is good.
Well, that's it. It's just we as for people who have large followings, and I know for your following, it's in many different areas and many different subjects. There, the fall of civilization. You have your your comparisons in symbolism and civilizations, your esoteric works. So but at the same time you have and you understand the responsibility that having that voice is, and some people use it for nefarious or unfortunate purposes. And
some people, some people are morons. What can you say? They don't get among other things, they don't get the simple fact that people who do that kind of thing, who grab on, who insist on beating other people over the head and spreading all kinds of false rumors and stuff like that, they don't last long. They make a big flash for a while, and then, oh yeah, I remember them back 10 years ago. Well, I wonder what they're doing now. We've had people like that in the peak oil scene, who made a huge amount of noise, denouncing and criticizing and condemning, and now it's, who are they? Whereas those of us who were approaching the thing in a more cooperative fashion, those of us who were, even though we disagree sharply about issues, who are willing to sit down together and talk, we're still here. So, when the crap is flying fast and thick, just remember you can outlast these people.
Well, this is very true, or at some point you just stop caring, like you drown it out, and
yeah,
and it's for any. It's like if you can either give in to the hate, or you can go with it, or or you can ignore it and hope to God it doesn't actually touch you, or you can fight against it. Sometimes, as I say, or my mother used to say all the time, if the nail that sticks out gets the hammer. I've always been that nail, and sometimes willingly so. So, because
yeah.
Now I know we on the last show we had and I was going to not having internet is kind of interesting, because I was actually going to listen to the last episode, because it's one of the episodes that I can listen to. I don't like listening to my own voice. It's one of those things. And even for myself, I remember that even though the information was new or different, we had some, because we're Freemasons, we have something in common that at least gives us that bond, and that's the whole idea of fraternity. So there was that instantaneous connection. It's very similar to if you find somebody who watches Game of Thrones, and just you watch Game of Thrones. Oh my! Well, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Do I? No, I don't. I actually haven't owned a television in my adult life. So, but I had the same experience. Scroll back a few decades, back when The Lord of the Rings was still relatively, not new. It was published before I was born, but when it was really the major presence in fantasy. Yeah, you'd meet somebody who had also read the trilogy, and all of a sudden, click. There's a common ground of conversation there.
And exactly, and it allows you to be able to form, a bond just beyond two people passing in the night. I'm trying to at least decide from an esoteric standpoint whether this is something that was known originally from the old guilds whenever they had actually started forming. Obviously, if you're a stonecutter and you're being brought onto a site that, essentially, you're going to be building a building with these people for a very long time, and then your kids are probably going to be building this building with your kids. You're going to have, if you don't know the language, if you don't know the culture, what you do actually have in common is your knowledge and ability to shape and work stone, and everything else kind of goes from there. So, if this is something that was kind of a basis, how have you seen this in the Druid Order?
Well, Druidry is complicated that way because Freemasonry has the huge advantage that there's basically, there's a set of landmarks, okay? And everybody more or less corresponds to those are common. Everybody who recognizes the landmarks, everybody who belongs to Grand Lodges that recognize each other, there's that common thing. Druidry is much less unified. Within individual Druid orders, there's a lot of that, a lot of camaraderie. Within the certain classes of organizations where there are connections, there's, for example, the order that I used to have, the Ancient Order of Druids in America, and the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, which is, I think, still the largest Druid order in the world these days, in which I also belong to. I've also studied with them. There's a huge amount of overlap there. There's a lot of very common ground, and you meet and somebody from AODA meets someone from OBOT, and instantly it's they're talking Druidry. If they're meeting something from the Celtic Reconstructionist end of things, you might as well be trying to communicate through the Berlin Wall, because the common ground does not exist. And so it's complicated. But I think one of the things that makes Freemasonry, that makes that such a very important Freemasonry, is precisely that there was the old occupational connection. I've recently, for a fiction project I'm working on, been reading a lot of material from on what it was like to sail on one of the old tall ships back in the day. And one of the things that's mentioned there is, you get a competent sailor who might not speak a word of your language. It's an American ship, and somebody comes on board. He's a Finnish sailor. He doesn't speak a word of English, but he's a good sailor. He knows what to do. You can very quickly work out enough language that everyone understands what's to be done, and there's an instant brotherhood because You're a sailor, he's a sailor. You know, you've got all these common skills. You have these common responsibilities. You know what it's like to serve in the forecastle, the forecastle, and away you go. So I think the fact that Masonry does come out of this heritage of medieval and Renaissance stonemason guilds gives it, frankly, more of a capacity to bond, because we've still got the relics, if you will, of that set of habits in place.
And obviously the ability to kind of, you're in close quarters, so getting along is kind of necessary, especially if you're over water for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
When you're on this,
it is just like. Yeah, it's just like being on a building site where you're going to be working with. This cathedral is going to take probably 200 years to build. You will spend the rest of your life with the same group of men. You've got to get along with them.
And there's also a lot more rum, and obviously you've probably saved their lives a couple of times. Stray cannon fire, or somebody falls overboard. It's like. I have friends in the Canadian military, or at least they were in the military. And again, if you're listening to this show, boys, thank you very much for your service. And as veterans, they still, they talk about, well, it was the camaraderie. I mean, it's because you have to trust these people with your lives, because it could be life or death.
Yeah, your butt is on the line, and so is theirs, and that really builds that really builds a connection.
And especially even in Freemasonry, when you're taking oaths on pain of death, essentially, as the traditional penalties were concerned,
pain of really colorful, complicated death.
Yeah, it's and again, nowadays kids, they're traditional penalties, which means we don't do them. You just essentially, if you give up the secrets, then you basically get to be known by everyone that you're somebody who doesn't keep their word. And not only just doesn't keep your word, you're somebody who outright lied after taking an oath on a holy book, and that's
exactly. Yeah, you're a liar and a cheat, and everyone knows it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It's But it is the traditional penalties are kind of fun. I don't really know how Canada arranges some of its higher degrees. In the United States, we have the York Rite, which involves the Royal Arch chapter. Same thing on your side of the border.
We have
Royal Arch chapter.
Yeah.
It's and then
we've got the Royal Arch, Scottish Rite, and Shriners.
Okay. On our side, Royal Arch plus Royal and Select Masters plus Knights Templar are all part of one body, which is the York Rite.
Yes.
And so that's been the branch that I've been most active in recently, other than just attending Blue Lodge and so on. And you can kind of tell as the new degrees were being added back in the 18th century, and they were trying to figure, okay, what are we going to put on as penalty for this one? It kind of got complicated.
Well, that's the thing in the Scottish Rite, and again, for those who are uninitiated or are initiated, and I just realized I put this out. I put this show out to the Canadian Freemasons group. So basically, the first thing that most of the brothers out there heard me was, it was just like, it's like, wow, this guy essentially just went on a full on rant. But if you listen to the show, you know how I roll. For the uninitiated out there, you've got your Scottish Rite and your York Rite. I think the Scottish Rite was actually thought up of in France, which is kind of weird, and York Rite is from England. Hence the name York. They both essentially tell you the same thing. They're just done completely differently.
They chop the degrees differently. They reassign the lectures in different places. The rituals, at least on this side of the border, the Scottish Rite rituals, they've been through a long. It's very French. You have a lot of complexity. It's kind of the difference between a good solid British roast beef dinner and this fine nouvelle cuisine product, coming out from a 5-star Michelin chef. It depends on which you prefer. Well, I tend to like the roast beef myself.
Well, this is the thing most people don't necessarily understand. It's like, if you're a Freemason, you don't get the secrets until like the 33rd degree, and you're Obviously, if you're not a 33rd degree, then you're not implemented or initiated into the true secrets, and you didn't take the left or the right path or what have you, or
blah blah blah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, all it is it's more of an explain. Like the Freemasonry is a system of morals, and all Scottish Rite and York Rite do is essentially expand and explain those morals and try and ingrain them more deeply so that you can become even better person because you understand yourself and society and human nature more. But they do it in different ways. At least, and again, correct me if I'm wrong.
They do it in different ways, yeah.
Yeah, like Scottish Rite here in Canada it's very very allegorical based. It's essentially community theater. Costumes.
That's a good description down here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And York Rite is more like your standard Blue Lodge. So if you've ever seen, for the uninitiated, if you've ever seen a show or a movie with Freemasonry in it and an actual lodge room, and you've got guys with aprons and it's essentially that. It's a lot of ritual. It's a lot of lecturing back and forth to an initiate and discussion, where to be able to essentially kind of convey these messages. You're telling it to somebody directly, whereas Scottish Rite, you got to watch something and figure it out.
Yeah.
And the community theater aspect I find very fun. Just based around the fact that, okay, you got this guy who you've only seen him in, a really, really nice tuxedo. And to make him look like a centurion, he's essentially wearing a one-piece nightshirt, the ones that go down to your knees, with slippers on, and what looks to be a hard helmet that has been reshaped, painted gold, and so on. So it's very cute and fun. I don't understand how people could think that we're dealing with Satanists and reptilian reptilian shape-shifting pedophiles from Zeta Reticuli, as I like to say. Because it's
or something like,
yeah, and I'm like, these guys, no, no, no way. And coming from a capital city of a major G8 nation, I can assure you that nobody's perfect. But if they're, and I know a lot of the 33rd degrees, if any of them are reptilian shape-shifting aliens, then the aliens they will never take over the planet. Because again, it all comes down to where are we going to have the pancake breakfast? Well,
yeah, exactly.
There's consensus, but there's it's your standard human nature that takes over. I doubt they. It's for me, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, I've been accused to my face of being an evil space lizard from out of David Icke's books, on the basis of being a Freemason. And it's just one of those things. You just have to roll your eyes sometimes and
think of England.
Encourage people to. What? Yeah, something. No, but just roll your eyes and suggest that people get out more or something. I mean, yeah, we're engaging in such evil, sinister projects as raising money for free childhood language centers for kids who have language difficulties, whose families can't afford therapy. That's the soul-shattering, bloodthirsty evil that we're engaged in.
That we help dyslexic kids read.
Yeah, exactly. That's our evil. Or the Shriners who are out there raising money for their children's hospitals and burn clinics, so that some kid who suffers horrible burns can get the very complex and expensive therapy that'll restore the poor child, to perfect health and function without cost.
Exactly.
And this is somehow evilness with a double helping of evil sauce on the side, and
Okay, well, again, the whole argument would come back and going like, well, you're only a 32nd degree. You don't have all the secrets. And then I would point out, well, okay, John's our Grand Archdruid. Now, here's a good question. Is that on that side of it? Like, is that the real Illuminati?
No, there is a chart that I've seen online in a couple of places which claims to give the entire hierarchy of the Illuminati, starting with Lucifer, the all-seeing eye, at the very top. And I think it's 2 notches down is the Grand Druid Council of the 13 top druids in the world. And then 1 notch below that are the 33 most influential Freemasons in the world. So the Druids actually outrank the Freemasons in the, in the councils of the Illuminati. But be that as it may, the Druids that I've met are and I've met most of the really significant figures in the Druid scene these days, and they're interested in things like tree planting campaigns.
And I'm guessing they all have very long beards.
Actually, no.
Really?
I am one of the few really luxuriantly bearded archdruids out there.
Again, speaking just...
I feel like we missed the Queen of England in there somewhere.
Oh, the Queen of England's got to be in there somewhere. I don't think she is actually part of this particular map of the Luciferian Illuminati hierarchy. So, they apparently left out a footnote.
Well, then
or something.
She has to be, because obviously the real head of the Illuminati is not going to be known. People
would not be known. Actually, it's actually the plot of this whole thing. It's a plot being carried out by the Girl Scouts.
Oh,
nobody suspected them. That proves that they must be guilty, right?
You know what, man? Those cookies are just too sinfully delicious. Like, I know
exactly.
that it's a conspiracy to widen my waistline so that I become
exactly
too fat.
And rot your teeth, proving that the dentists are into it too.
Oh, you know what? The dentists wouldn't exist. I swear the dentists wouldn't exist without those lab coats. You can't have a dentist office without a lab coat. It just does not exist.
So now we know their secret regalia.
So well, there you go. And what about those those things that they give to their kids, like it's supposed to be candy. How do we know that it isn't like some type of crazy
the black Saturnalian schmucks that all the judges wear?
Oh, I know.
Many seriously respectable or seriously respected theories have gotten going on bases thinner than this.
Now, just give me 1 second here, because Alex sent me a link to the image. I just want to post it up here, but I'm probably going to... let's see here, webcam, screen share plus small webcast. See, I labeled all these things. Well, oh, there we go. Oh, my goodness, it actually worked. Okay, so, yeah, this is the... it's this... what is it?
I'm sure it's different. There's no druids on this one.
So, World Monarch...
Did we get left out? I'm offended.
Apparently, like, IBM and DuPont is in there, ExxonMobil and Shell... Let's see, Crown Council of the 13, Committee of the 300, think tanks.
Check the Crown Council of 13, because that's usually the
world's richest, most powerful families, apparently.
Okay, that's not us then. Okay. Yeah. So there are competing versions out there. I'll see if I can find the one that I saw. It was in a book that had a picture of Barbara Bush in a polka dot dress, and the caption insisted the polka dot dress was this evil, sort of throbbing, hypnotic thing. She was like teaching children to read and obviously corrupting their minds with Illuminati messages or something.
Now, I saw a post on it was posted to the Adept Initiates group, and they've started to really clamp down on the trolls, because it's all about self-initiation into enlightenment, essentially. Trying to open up yourself more to the world, which I think is really cool. And he posted a picture of, I think it was Barack Obama and Justin Trudeau wearing traditional Chinese, or at least what's supposed to be traditional Chinese, like full robes, but it's blue with with yellow polka dots on it, and going they just came from a secret Grand Lodge meeting. I'm like, are they drunk? Because any Grand Lodge meeting I've been to, at the end of it, there has been some scotch imbued. It's just the way we roll. They seem to be at least walking upright.
I obviously need to attend some Canadian Grand Lodge meetings. The scotch tends to take place after hours and in different facilities.
Yep.
Here it's so
that's how we do it here. Well, Grand Lodge is coming up in July, in middle of July here in Ontario. So if you're in Toronto, if you want to come down, I'll be down there for 3 days.
I will keep that in mind if I have a chance to get up to Toronto in July.
At the Royal Ottawa Hospital, or not the Royal Ottawa Hospital. The Regents, it's the Fairmont Royal Hotel in downtown Toronto. and they've got 18-year-old Scotch in the bar on the menu. And I have to say, it was a Glenfiddich 18. It was so good, I actually got it for my wedding, and I just had a bottle for myself. And it was, oh my goodness, it makes the 12-year, it makes it seem like gasoline in comparison. It's beautiful.
Good heavens, the 12-year is good.
Oh no, but it's smooth. Okay. That's why I drink it.
Exactly. No, that's really good. So okay, I'm keeping that in mind.
Now, going like speaking at least of esotericism.
And I gotta get into esotericism, sure.
Well, this is a beautiful part. Like we used to structure our shows a lot, and it was great for organization. But in terms of, we just kind of went to like an open, open conversation format and let it go wherever it goes because it's really entertaining. But you have 2 books that came out recently, or at least they're coming out.
I have actually one of them. One of them is the one on the Coelbern Alphabet. That one's out now.
Okay.
At least I have received my author's copies. No, that's right. I've heard from a couple of people who got this, so it is just hitting the stands right now. And then the Academy of the Sword is also out. It is actually a reprint. It was originally published by another publisher quite some years ago, and the other publisher went splat in a complicated way, and it has taken me a while to get it in print again, but it is out again in a lovely new, frankly, better printing than the original. And so I'm very happy with that. But both of them are available, and our readers our listeners rather, can run out and buy copies as soon as they finish listening to us.
Well, we have what we do is we put the links to the books directly in the show notes, so if people want to check it out. Now, I wanted to bring these up. Well, first of all, because for anybody who comes on the show, and for anybody who understands this format of talk radio, it's essentially we give you entertainment. And it gives researchers the ability to get their ideas and their thoughts out there, and essentially promote their book. This is how the advertising world works. Now,
free publicity and an opportunity to have a pleasant conversation. What's not to like?
Pretty much. Now, the thing is, especially with Academy of the Sword, even if it is a reprint, an entire sword fighting system based off of sacred geometry. Like, I put this in. I'm like, we have to talk about this shit tonight. Like, this is going.
Oh yeah. This is the Academy of the Sword, l'Académie de l'Épée, as it was originally, published in 1630 by Gerard Thibault, the author. He was kind of the Bruce Lee of the rapier in his time. He was an extremely skilled swordsman, died young, but he basically. Well, we're talking Renaissance Europe, late Renaissance Europe. The sword had become, it was less of a military assault weapon in those days. Dueling was more common, firearms had come in, and so a war had become a matter of pike and musket rather than, knights in armor hacking each other with swords. And so the sword had been subjected to the same sort of intellectual inquiry and experimentation that the Renaissance did in so many other fields. And first in Italy and then in Spain, you had people who started saying, hold it. We have these new swords, which are the rapier, which is long and straight and is used not to cut but to stab, mostly. And it's geometrical. It's a line. And this line is intersecting another line, the other guy's sword, and it is penetrating various surfaces of the other guy's body. Can we understand swordsmanship through geometry? And so you had this whole movement to try to make sense of swordsmanship as a geometrical art at a time when geometry was all through Europe perfused with Pythagorean influences, with the ideas of sacred geometry, with the same kind of ideas that led to Freemasonry, in fact. And so Thibault was born in what's now part of Belgium. He was born in Antwerp, and went down to Spain. His family was in the woolen trade, and they had connections to the south of Spain. And the south of Spain was a hotbed of fencing in these years. You had just these brilliant swordsmen down there who were working with this geometrical stuff. And Thibault goes down there, and he's there for like 10 years, learning everything he can, and then he comes back home. And starts, just sparring with people in the ordinary way of things. There were basically gymnasia, dojos, we'd say nowadays, where people would practice swordsmanship and other martial arts. They were all over the place. And all of a sudden people were going, who is this Thibault guy, and why is he cleaning the floor with everybody? And so finally, he ended up taking part in this big tournament in northwestern Europe, up in, I think it was in Antwerp actually, and people came there from all over, from Germany, from France, and he just literally wiped the floor with all of them.
No.
And William of Orange, who was the Dutch head of state right across the border in the Netherlands, said, "Okay, come here, show me what you can do." Free publicity, right? It's the equivalent of a podcast. Except, so he proceeded to give a demonstration for 3 days where he took on all comers. Hey, come on, let's cross swords. Clunk. Now, they were all doing it with blunted points, so there were no corpses at the end of this process. But had it been sharp, it's like a Shakespearean play. The theater strewn with rushes in the first act and corpses in the fifth. And so he ended up as literally the most famous swordsman of his time. He set out because his health was not good. He'd originally been sent down to Spain to try to recover his health. He'd originally actually taken up fencing as exercise to try to build his health. But so he set to work to write this book, and it is actually the largest single book on swordsmanship ever written.
That's insane. In
English translation, it's about 120,000 words. It has 54 double-sided, two-page copper plate engravings, each of which has between 12 and 20 techniques on it. And it's just this monumental encyclopedic book on how to fight with a 17th century rapier.
And especially in those get-ups, because you're essentially wearing a corset with like pantaloons or shorts which are look like a skirt, and no pants and very small shoes. And I've got
you've got hose on.
You've got so I've got
you've got hose on. You've got shoes. You've got hose. Now some of the people in the color plate engraving are wearing next to nothing, so you can see all the muscles.
Well, there you go.
But in actual practice, again, this is 1630. Okay, we're moving away from the sort of Elizabethan look with the big ruffed collars and the big puffy, peas cod doublets and all this kind of stuff, and toward the sort of English Civil War period look, but hadn't gotten there yet. So yeah, you have these sort of puffed short pantaloons, the long hose, and the doublets laced up tight to the neck. And sleeved and this kind of stuff. And
yeah, I've got a picture of it. I actually have a picture from the book that I found on Google, and it's essentially I think they're in training in this image. They're standing across from one another, swords outstretched and pointing at one another, and they're wearing they're wearing something that looks like it's out of my 10th grade drama class.
Exactly. There are 4 on each side, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, that's the introductory image from chapter 3, where he's showing you what the stance is like and how you enter into it.
Okay, now where exactly where exactly did he get the idea for this, like for this system? Like, is there any reference as far as the origin for it?
Oh yeah, again, this came out of the whole what I was talking about earlier, the whole scene first in Italy and then in Spain, where people were developing these systems of geometrical fencing, and they were doing it because this is the time when it was totally okay to call someone out for a duel and kill them over some insult. You elbowed me, sir. I will see you on the field of honor, and you go and kill each other. And this was legal. It was commonly practiced. It happened all the time. So if you were a member, a gentleman in one of the classes that was at risk of dueling, you either learned to use a sword or you started raising money for your tombstone, because things like that happen all the time. And so in that viciously Darwinian environment where if you knew how to use a sword, you were going to survive and thrive and prosper, and if you didn't, you would croak. This Spanish system became extremely widespread and very popular. And Thibault, again, he developed it in some ways originally, put in some new material, gave it his own spin, but it's very much part of this broader world of old-fashioned rapier fencing that went out around 1700, except in Spain, where it actually continued through the 19th century.
Sorry, that's a problem whenever you breathe in too quickly. It's like you get a little spit in there, it goes down the wrong hole, and you're done. I've always found, like, around this time that this type of fencing came about, and it came about essentially because carrying large swords around and covering yourself in plate armor was no longer really feasible, especially with guns. So
it was a waste of time. When some peasant with 2 weeks of training could point a musket at you and put a musket ball through the best armor in Europe and out the other side, and you're dead on the field, why bother with armor? So everyone just kind of scrapped the plate armor, except maybe a breastplate and a helmet or something if you were expecting to deal with swords a lot.
How familiar are you with martial arts?
Very. I've studied. Oh. I actually have basic teaching credentials in one of the old styles of Tai Chi.
Okay, so essentially, this is kind of the fencing equivalent or sword fighting equivalent of, everyone's got Tai Chi or Wing Chun, Tiger style, all that, and then let's say a Bruce Lee comes along and comes out with Jeet Kune Do. That was is it like essentially that same level of
Not so, well. Again, the thing to keep in mind is that the people up in northwestern Europe had never really been exposed to the Spanish and Italian ideas. It was more what happened in the United States when we had a lot of boxing and wrestling and things, and all of a sudden some people start coming over who have kung fu training, and all of a sudden, what the heck was that? Oh. In terms of a martial art. Gerard Thibault's teachings is rather more similar to a classical Kung Fu system than it is to, say, Jeet Kune Do, because Jeet Kune Do is, of course, very spontaneous. And Thibault's system is very formal, is very structured. And so, although he doesn't, the kata, if you will, the form, the established form had not yet gotten going in European martial arts yet, he gives specific techniques. It's actually very similar in a lot of ways to the Koryu, the classical Japanese martial arts forms from the samurai era.
And how about how do we know that it was that it was based on sacred geometry? Is it completely stated that it's like, well, I got these, like I've been observing nature and these lines are based on this, or
it's more that he starts you out by showing you how to draw a circle based on your own height and the length of your sword, and set up a whole series of lines across it and dividing it and so on. And every movement you make is based on positions of the circle and geometrical lines. And he's constantly talking geometry. He's constantly quoting. He quotes Cornelius Agrippa, the author of 3 books of occult philosophy, extensively on the geometries of the human body.
So was he Rosicrucian or
nobody knows?
Nobody knows.
Well, the thing is, in 1630, nobody talked. Everyone talked about the Rosicrucians, but everybody who was involved with it said, "Well, I'm interested. This stuff is fascinating, but of course, I'm not a Rosicrucian." Thibault never mentioned it. I would say that, if you want to look at people in the early 1700s, the original seedbed of the Rosicrucian movement, who were likely to have been involved in it, Thibault's one. There are others, Robert Flood, Michael Meyer, all these other people. But Thibault was very much part of that same cultural movement, and so it's entirely possible that, here we have our surviving manual of Rosicrucian martial arts.
What is the difference between, let's say, Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism? I have family members who apparently, at least, again, I love them to death. They claim to be Rosicrucians, or at least in the Rosicrucians where they are. I don't know for sure, because we don't have at least anything to my knowledge here in Ottawa. There probably is.
Good heavens, there's lots.
Oh, okay. Well, I have not gone out looking. I can hardly deal with Blue Log, Scottish Rite,
Gotcha.
And the various charity events that I do concerning.
You're already hopping. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the thing to remember with the Rosicrucians is that there was the original movement in 17th century Europe. The original 3 Rosicrucian manifestos, the proclamation of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood, all the furor back and forth of that. By the next century, there were specific organizations in Central Europe and elsewhere, although nobody knows if they were connected to the original group. And then by the 20th century, you have groups springing up all over the place that are borrowing the Rosicrucian name, whether or not they have any connection to the historical group. There are, let's see, that I know of, 4 major Rosicrucian groups still very active in North America. And they teach various systems of esoteric philosophy, which they claim date back to the original Rosicrucian order, and in some cases before that as well. And they all claim to be the real, authentic, original Rosicrucians, just like some old Druid groups claim to be the real, authentic ancient Druids. They're probably not, but most of them do really have useful things to teach. So, if you ever find yourself with spare time to rub together, talk to your relatives. Ask them for a if they have a little introductory pamphlet or something on that you might be interested.
Well, it's a possibility to have to ask him to scan it because he doesn't live in this continent. But still, if that's the case, like I know that he, when the last time I went to go visit them, they had, or he was either in it or was just entering into it. And from what I can recall, he had told me that there are. It's like what I would wish your average Freemason, like your average Freemason knight, if there's no degrees to be, which is essentially lecture, presenting a lecture, or at least starting a discussion based on an idea or a concept to try and get people to the core of an idea, so that we can educate ourselves as well as our fellow brethren. As you know, doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but what are you going to do? Whereas he said, no, we have to give several on a constant basis, and we have to research them, and they have to be very good. And he didn't go much more into that. If it's philosophical, I have to say, from a history standpoint, the history is always great. It's more the practicality of it. Is it more just a pure knowledge-based system, or is it
It depends on which group it is.
Okay.
Let's see. Of the four Rosicrucian orders that I know of that are still in circulation, let's see. The Fraternitas Rosicrucis. I don't know what they teach. They're teaching. Nothing has leaked out. The Ancient Mystical Order Rosicrucis. I know some people who are heavily involved in that, or who have been heavily involved in it, and that has a very definite practical esoteric dimension. The Rosicrucian Fellowship teaches a lot of astrology. That's one of their main focus: astrology and a kind of Christian esoteric philosophy. And the other one is the Societas Rosicruciana in America, which is not the same. The long, complicated story there, but then they teach a really comprehensive system of esoteric and occult philosophy and practice. You do a lot of meditating and things like that.
And
in all probability, you're getting something more than just history.
Okay, and to what purpose? At least for myself, I know that the major claim behind Freemasonry is making good men better. Again, for myself, and even for the Druidic orders, I'm assuming it's very really earth connecting in terms of the lessons and the knowledge.
Yeah, the idea of Druidry. The idea of Druidry is basic. I mean, again, ask 3 Druids, get 5 answers. We are not orthodoxy is not the way we do things, and so but yeah, the thing about one of the core ideas behind Druidry is simply that human beings think they're separate from nature. Human beings think that many human beings think that they're not part of the natural world, that we're somehow outside it. And when we try to pretend that of ourselves, we're A, wrong, and B, a little crazy. And so a lot of what Druidry is about is getting in touch with nature and recognizing that human nature is part of nature. It's difficult to talk about in some ways because so many people are focused on the idea of, becoming better by hacking off portions of themselves. There's this idea, this Puritan idea that we have, especially in the United States, given our Puritan ancestry, that the way you become good is to find the bad thing and to get rid of it, and that makes you good. We apply it to everything in America. Watch the way people talk about food. It's all, what is the bad food? Is it sugar? Is it cholesterol? Lectins are now the latest fad. You find the bad food, the devil of the food, and you banish it from your life, and that makes you good. Back in Victorian times, of course, it was sex. You get rid of sex, or pretend to get rid of sex, more likely, and that makes you good. Druidry looks at goodness as wholeness and balance, not as some kind of amputation. Are you going to have sex? Of course. but you do it in a balanced way. You do it in a way that is respectful to everyone involved and doesn't involve breaking promises or any of this kind of nonsense. The Druid diet, we make jokes about this sometimes. The Druid diet consists of eating what makes your body feel healthy, whether or not it's what some guy in a white lab coat claims you ought to eat.
So along that line of thinking, and I'm just going to give you a hypothetical here, and again, please do not take offense by this, because I always take things right to the extreme. The idea,
by all means.
Okay. So by that, and I understand I'm probably splitting hairs here. By that logic, and my line of thinking is, okay, if let's say, sex is good because you will reproduce. It's a way of bonding with your partner, etc., etc., etc. But at the same time, you wouldn't want to, like, let's say, you don't be an asshole about it. You treat people with respect. You consent, all that. So, like sex, let's say going on a 7-day meth bender and then going to a sex club for the entire time, probably not the most wholesome thing on the planet. At the same time, if you're able to handle it, then by all means.
And the thing is, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, you're probably not finished with your.
But again, society looks at both of those, a lot of society looks at both of those things as something that's immoral or negative or what have you, or it makes them uncomfortable, and because it makes them uncomfortable, they attribute it to something else, or they just realize that's not for me, and that's all well and good. It's the same thing to a lot of other people and a lot of other things. Like if I'm going to eat sugar, if I'm going to have a cookie every now and again, that's great. I have 50.
Oh, dreadful! Yeah.
Like if those damn Girl Guide Illuminati foot soldiers come to the door and sell me their double stash, then that's bad, because then I've spent $50 and my wife is going, why the hell do you eat all the chocolate?
Treats, Chris. Lizard treats.
But you tell that to the Girl Guides, who are like, man, they're good. You're helping my you're helping my troop get somewhere. And you have to support the community. And if I have to kill myself, of gluttony, to help those little kids who have brainwashed me and have probably, some reptilian mothership they're going back to with their cookies.
Serving the central bank.
How do you think?
The central chocolate bank, yeah.
Well, there has to be a lot of research that makes those things to make them taste so goddamn good.
Mm-hmm. Well, there we go. And the thing is, one of the other things that you get with the Puritan mindset that we all absorb from from our ancestry in sort of the greater Anglophone culture sphere, the Puritan mindset has, I think, best been defined as the shuddering, nerve-wracking, unstoppable terror that someone somewhere is having a good time. Our societies are terrified of simple enjoyment. If you enjoy something, it's got to be bad, or you've got to come up with some kind of justification for it. Eating chocolate, it has to be evil because it's enjoyable. And if you want to be really neurotic, that's not a bad way to do it. And if you want to get people really bent out of shape so that you can bully them around into doing things, that's also a good way to do about it. But Druids kind of look at that and say, okay, what's the point? If you enjoy something and it's not hurting anybody, or if it's hurting, if it's potentially harmful to you, but you're willing to take the consequences of it, like binging on those cookies. Okay, it might expand your waistline a little. It might rot your teeth. Okay, if you're saying
dancing skyclad if you eat too much chocolate, right?
Well, I have seen plenty of people dancing skyclad at every point along the scale, from skeletally thin to very round. And the thing is, Druids are the ones who keep their robes on in ritual.
Remember that, ladies, and thank especially for, if you like a certain shape, that's great, and if fantastic. I know for myself, there are certain types of round I would rather see with the robe off and then on. Or if it is off and it is the wrong type of round, I'm hoping that it's hypnotic and I just fall asleep. Just saying.
My response is basically human beings are human beings, and they come in a lot of different shapes. It's not my business to worry about that. The other thing, of course, about those evil chocolate cookies, by the way,
Goddamn girl
is
guides.
that you know as well as I do that within 5 years to the outside, the physicians will have changed their minds completely as to whether it's good for you or not. I mean, I remember when polyunsaturated fats were good for you and all cholesterol was bad. That wasn't that long ago.
Seems like we're missing the instruments to look at our own health better.
Yeah.
A lot of it's going to be based off of one researcher, and even though at this point we have a lot of evidence that has been presented and a lot of news that has come out where research papers are being falsified regularly.
In fantastic numbers, yeah.
And I need a real-life tricorder.
Yeah.
Well, the way that I've heard the general rule of thumb, if you go to the grocery store, stay to the outside. Mm-hmm. If you're going to the inside, you're going to that dark place. Non-processed foods as much as possible.
Fear of food. Why? Okay. Again, it's a fear of pleasure. Eating is enjoyable, or at least it should be if you're actually eating food rather than the sort of plastic processed food type substance being extruded for you by some industrial whatchamacallit. Food is pleasurable, so of course people get all Puritan and get terrified of it. Let's not. Why don't we just say, okay, one of the benefits of being alive is that we get to enjoy ourselves. Why not accept that?
Well, you have one life to live.
Why not just say, okay, or more than one. Druidry, probably more druids accept reincarnation than not. Again, we don't have much in the way of orthodoxy, and that's certainly not one of them. But reincarnation is pretty generally accepted in druids. But okay, so you're going to be back. That doesn't change the fact that you're here now. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your life? Are you going to accomplish some good in the world? I hope so. Are you going to have a good time? I hope so. Are you going to learn a few things? Well, yeah. And so...
well, unless you're a cicada, which then you're screwed. Or not. If you're not, then your life has been a waste. If you are, then at least, your 5 minutes of being alive are fine. But how...
if you're the thing is, we think of those 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes as we experience time. How much experience do they get in that 5 minutes? I mean, a mayfly lives for less than a day, but its nervous system is moving very quickly during that time. It could live through an entire life worth of what we consider a life worth of experience in that, in that less than a day.
An elephant and a mouse have the same number of heartbeats in their life or something?
Yeah, exactly. And very likely, they have the same amount of experience. It's just differently arranged. If you're a mouse, day and night are these immense, long cycles. If you're an elephant, they move kind of quickly. If you're a tortoise, they're just blurring past.
What are... Because I know certain... essentially mainstream Satanism, from what I can understand, they don't... Well, and hear me out here, at least from my understanding, and again, I could be wrong on this.
Go ahead.
So mainstream Satanism does not actually... They're called Satanists, yet they don't actually worship Satan. So the flaming fire and the picture of the Dark Lord, may his eternal fires burn forever, they are more along the lines of do whatever you need to do, but as long as you're not hurting anybody, type of thing.
Okay, it depends on your Satanist.
True.
Okay. These days, you have traditional Satanists who basically take Christianity and stand it on their heads, and they do worship the devil, who they consider as the god of freedom and liberation and things like that. Okay. They're one group. They're really having a hard time these days, by the way, and that's largely because of Vatican II. These are the people who do the Black Mass, right? Mm-hmm. How can you parody Kumbaya? How can you satirize something? How can you satirize a guitar mass, in any way that it doesn't already satirize itself? So traditional Satanism is in kind of a bad way. You have the Satanism a la Anton Zandor Levy, whose actual name was Howard Stanton Levy, and who discovered the remarkable fact that posing as a big bad evil Satanist would get Jane Mansfield to take off her clothes in your living room.
Strong men
who succumbed to much less temptation than that.
So essentially, he was heavy metal before heavy metal was actually figured this out and said, if we do this in our show, the parents will be pissed off, but the kids will love it because the parents hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
The thing is, he was there long. The thing is, that whole thing has been going on for a very long time. If you look through the history of religion, whatever the hot new religion is, it's got to shock your mom. If it doesn't shock you, that's one of the reasons Wicca is in such trouble these days. It's become too normal, too mainstream. It's lost its mom shocking potential.
Well, because moms are Wiccan now, so how
exactly they're exactly how dull. So of course all the kids are going to do something else now. But so you have this the Anton Sandor LaVey thing, which is basically Ayn Rand's objectivism dressed up in a devil suit. Most of his Satanic Bible is ripped off from Randian objectivism, which about which the less said the better. Then you have the people nowadays who are doing the Temple of Satan thing, who are actually mostly atheists, and are doing it to try to, in this country at least, to make fun of the religious right and to try to take all of these various laws intended for the defense of traditional Christianity, and because they can't, as a religious group, they can't be excluded. These are the people who are like getting statues of the devil reading to a pair of children and trying to get them put on courthouse lawns and so on.
So it's the equivalent of the kids, the people who are that type of Satanist are the ones that are on 4chan, and the people who worship the flying spaghetti monster are on BuzzFeed?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, except actually, the 4chaners are a world unto themselves. I've actually ended up in conversations with some of them as a result of my blogs, which attracted a trickle of them, and that is its own planet, and a very strange one. But so you've got all these different peoples who are sort of quarreling over the ownership of Satan, and who gets to call themselves Satanists, and what a Satanist actually is, and blah 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 blah. I really don't worry about it. It's not my religion, it's like the arguments between subsets of Baptists, whatever.
Now, when you bring in people, let's say, and again, I'm not going to talk Pike here because the one
we could have fun with that.
Well, okay, let's go there then. Let's go there. Every single time I've heard anybody try and talk down about Freemasonry, they will bring up Albert Pike's quote, and
which is pulled out of context and usually misquoted, by the way. But go on.
Yeah, what is it here? I'm trying to find the exact quote here. It's not actually in this. Well, I'll find it in a second. But essentially, it's for Morals and Dogma is several hundred pages of moral and dogmatic interpretations of Freemasonry. And essentially what that means is, here are the morals and dogma of this of this ritual. It's explaining what these morals are, which is to be a good person, etc., etc. Now, I know I'm trying to actually have to... Nope. I actually tried to search... All I need to do is to search Lucifer, and I can't actually find it. Pike, Lucifer quote. Lucifer quote. Lucifer is the god of Freemasonry. This will be good. I'm actually going to show this page on screen just because it's that fucking hilarious. There we go. Lucifer is the god of Freemasonry. Let's see here. Is it in here? Lucifer. 18 matches. When Masons learn that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. So, apparently, there you go. There's your Luciferian powers, right.
The Lucifer. The thing is, again, it's out of context and out of its historical context. Do you know that matches, ordinary safety matches, in the early 19th century were called Lucifers?
No.
Yeah, because they were light bringers, and that's what the word means. Lucifer, one who carries light, one who brings light. And so it was a much more flexible concept. He's not saying that the Christian devil, ... And this was the kind of thing that everybody understood. People are dumb these days. This would involve... I don't know a Canadian equivalent, so I hope you'll forgive me. But if any of our readers or any of our listeners rather who know their way around American history will look up the Lincoln-Douglas debates. These were debates between Abraham Lincoln when he was a candidate for the Senate and Stephen Douglas also a candidate. And the two of them were debating in Illinois in a senatorial campaign about issues relating to slavery, okay? And this was not some kind of highbrow thing. They were, in front of ordinary voters, slaughterhouse workers and mill workers, this kind of stuff. And they had this series of debates, which were intelligent, which discussed the issues, which weren't these, we're going to feed you a question and let you babble about a result or something like that. It was actually a one-on-one debate that was intelligent and thoughtful and meaningful and addressed the issues and used language that, that went beyond kindergarten level. You compare that to the kind of thing that passes for a political debate nowadays in your country as well as mine, it's humiliating. People think we're progressing, we're becoming more intelligent. We're not. To judge by the level of public education and understanding, to judge by the level of thoughts that people are able to process these days, we are a lot dumber than people were in 1858. And for that reason, Albert Pike, who was writing in the late 19th century, was able to make references to Lucifer, the concept, and people would get it, and they would know perfectly well he's not talking about the Christian devil. Well, he's talking about a label that was used in many different ways, and yet nowadays people are so dense that all they can do is, oh, the devil. Jeez.
Well, I'm going to bring this up, and every single time I'm not sure. What was it? Guess there we go. I pressed a series of hotkeys, and it deleted one of my displays. So I have to do this a little differently here. So this this is the Wikipedia article on the Taxel quote. I know, or Taxel hoax.
Mm-hmm.
And I know.
Oh, we could have fun with that.
Now I know that people will always point to Freemasonry's devil worshipping, etc., etc. Well, in the
Leo Taxel said so.
Yeah. And this was 1890s, like 1890s. Leo Taxel,
you have to ask them if it's working then.
Well, to a certain extent, yes, because you're going to have a certain amount of society, and I always go with and this is more not objectivism, objectivism, and I know that it's more of an Ayn Rand concept, and I know you may not necessarily like Ayn Rand, but if you go with Terry Goodkind, it uses somewhat of the same principles, but more towards critical thinking through his entire series, and then uses a fantasy setting as a setting to be able to tell a story to inculcate these concepts. And it's a fantastic read. You can't put the first 7 down, and then they start to weed a little bit off, and then he brought in a bunch of zombies, and it's like, okay, dude, you're just trying to get off the whole Walking Dead thing, and it's just your book sucking.
I guess the term jumping the shark comes to mind at that point.
Yeah, when zombies come out, you're done.
Once the zombies show, just bring down the curtain.
And he has exactly. And he's got a few of these. The first couple of books are just phenomenal, and they all each book teaches a wizard's rule, quote unquote, or a principle that you can use to essentially keep yourself apart from certain situations, to look at it more critically. And the first one is, okay, well, people are fucking stupid. They're going to. No, individuals can be intelligent. People as a whole, and again, not the denizens. You guys are very intelligent because you're here. But people in general,
they're here as individuals.
Yeah, no, people in general are dumb as fuck. And because of they will believe any lie, either because they want it to be true, or they're afraid that it is true. If you hate Freemasons and you're like, oh, I hear Freemasons are Satan worshippers, man, those fucking Freemason Satan worshippers, or it's like, okay, well, you're really religious, and you're like, oh my god, my next door neighbors are Freemason. Are they like they're going to steal my child and sacrifice it to their dark lord, and then somehow seduce me into some type of sexual orgy, and I'll have to bring maple syrup to the pancake breakfast,
which I desperately want to do, but won't
exactly.
let myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So because of that, you're gonna and because of that fact that people do not think critically, they will believe anything they hear because they're dumb as fuck. Then they can be led to believe anything, and we're slowly starting to get into politics because I just stopped giving. We didn't usually talk politics. I talk politics now just because I just don't like things are so fucked up down where you are. It's what's the best way to put it? Your current president, like our prime minister is, I don't know if he's a well-meaning guy or not. I think honestly he's somebody who grew up very privileged, and he doesn't understand what your average person making $30,000 or $40,000 a year as a single parent to raise their kid has to deal with in terms of the costs involved. He's ignorant, but I don't think he's mean-spirited. He just thinks he's doing the right thing, which can be just as dangerous because the road the path to hell is paved with good intentions. If you have a multi-billionaire who has made his entire life's fortune off of complete opulence, narcissistic tendencies, belittling, destroying your enemies out of spite, denigrating and looking down on people who are smarter than him, and surrounding yourself with sycophants. If you expect him to be able to change the world around you, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, well, if you believe it,
the thing you have to understand. With the ascension of Trump, I actually predicted his victory in January of 2016.
Oh fuck! I called it the first candidates debate. I'm just like, he's gonna win, and my friend turns to me and he's like, "Are you sure?" Well, let's put it this way: you elect the government you deserve, for better or for worse.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing that led me to call back in January of 2016, so most of a year before the election, is that every other candidate was basically pushing that we're going to continue doing exactly what we've been doing since the W. Obama consensus, the identical policies that had been stuck in place under George W. Bush and Barack Obama, which have, by the way, run maybe half of the American people into the ground. The policies that have, I mean, when I was young, which was a few years ago now, a family of four with one working class income could afford a house, a car, 3 square meals a day, all that kind of stuff. A family of four trying to live on one working class income in America today is living on the street. Nobody's willing to talk about the fact that did not happen by accident. It happened by specific policies embraced by both parties. And it has literally has driven half the country into destitution, and no politician was willing to say, maybe we should change those policies. Trump said, we need to revisit those policies. We need to revisit the idea of a completely open border that basically where we're bringing in millions of illegal immigrants who thus have no civil rights and no employment rights to drive wages down, and offshoring all of our jobs. Now, the fact that he was lying is another matter, but the fact is he was willing to talk about it. That's why he won.
Now that he's won, he doesn't actually have to play the line anymore. It's you can watch a person's act. Like, if you want to know a man, you watch his actions, not his words, because actions are going to betray a lie.
But people are so desperate that they and given who he was running against.
Well, again, I'm no fan of Hillary. Hillary was the, and especially the way that she won the nomination. Like, I'm sorry, that this.
Excuse me, stole the nomination.
Stole the nomination. Again, I'm not I'm my political spectrum's all over the map. Whether you're talking liberal politics, I believe in gun rights, and hell, open carry permits, wonderful thing, because you actually decrease crime in the areas that have open carry permits. Would you fuck with somebody if you know they got a gun? No.
No. Like I say, if they're packing heat right out there on their hip, yeah, exactly.
Now, or again, for instance, like socialized healthcare. I'm Canadian. I grew up with socialized healthcare. It's not the greatest, but I've never gone broke having to pay my health bills, my medical bills. Fortunately.
Well, I will grant you, whatever else one can say, the United States has the worst healthcare in the industrial world. Whatever we are doing, do not do it. Okay. Anything other than what we have in the United States is an improvement. So if socialized healthcare is the improvement you prefer, I have no argument with that. What we do doesn't work. It's a complete, total, stinking, reeking, smoldering disaster. We spend more money and get worse healthcare than any other nation in the industrial world. So, if you want to talk about social, I have no problem. Whatever, anything else. Although, actually, I need to qualify that, because one of the things that we saw with the Obamacare fiasco is that it's possible to take the worst healthcare system in the world and actually make it worse.
Well, okay, he tried to fix a broken system with a Republican House that was essentially
it wasn't Republican when he passed it. It was he had 2 Democratic houses when he passed that. It was because he passed it that and because people were pointing out the obvious disasters. No, it was what you have to understand about Obamacare is that it's a full employment bill for the medical industry. It's corporate welfare.
It is.
Basically, people are, because what you're passing is a law that says, okay, you can't afford health insurance, that's fine. You have to buy it anyway under force of law.
We have to do the same thing with car insurance here in Canada. In Ontario, I can't drive a car.
Yes, but is that going to cost you more than your house payment? Because that's what it costs in many places here.
I've seen people with car insurance that's close to $1,000 a month. Of course, obviously they've had multiple DUIs.
Wow.
They had multiple DUIs. Like nobody's willing to insure them. But if you're talking about like when he passed it, yes. But in terms like he had difficulty with anything else or getting the support that he needed even further down the line, even when he had a majority in both houses. He was the only president that was close to a lame duck president with controlling both houses. It's ridiculous.
It's really simple. The thing is, Barack Obama is an incredibly good campaigner and an incompetent executive. He is one of the real political geniuses of our time in terms of getting elected, and especially, his 2008 campaign, Hope, Change, Yes We Can, totally empty, totally cynical, incredibly brilliant. The man could win any election going, but he has no idea how to run a country, and so he basically just went kind of dead in the water once he was in office. But I don't know. I thought the comment that I made back at the time was that we were facing in America a choice between which of the 2 most detested people in American public life was going to occupy the White House for the next 4 years, and they're both detested for very good reasons. There were, and this is perhaps the great shame of our political system, because there were easily tens of thousands of people who were really qualified to be president, and none of them were on the ballot.
And both parties, as far as their nomination, their nomination process, essentially they try and make it look as open as they possibly want to.
But it's not.
Yeah, for anybody out here who's listening to this, if you knew me, you would know that I'm, you'll say like, oh, I'm gonna bash Trump. Yeah, because he's a fucking idiot. He's a fucking idiot crook. Hillary was a complete fraud. I didn't look at any of the third parties. I think there was one libertarian candidate who was on Joe Rogan Experience who seemed fairly intelligent, who got close to at least almost becoming what we would call here in Canada official party status. But the media doesn't want to get involved in that because the party is essentially like, even if they're going to talk trash and try and fight as much in front of the camera, it's all a fucking show. It's all a fucking show for you people. Behind the scenes, they're cutting deals, they're being buddy-buddy, because you know what? You're the ones who are fucking crawling in the muck and the dirt and the shit and having to deal with their decisions, and they're the ones collecting that lobbyist money. So yeah, they're going to make a good show of it, so you guys stay divided and fight amongst yourselves, because if you were to realize how fucked up things are in D.C. and how badly you guys have been fucked from both parties. Like, the Democrats have no balls, and the Republicans are fucking evil. That's basically it. It's party over country. I'm sorry. You're an American?
No.
Support your fucking country.
The way that I've described it is that on any point of view, there is a Democratic and a Republican, or a liberal and conservative viewpoint. And the liberal viewpoint is well-meaning and ineffectual, and the conservative viewpoint is practical and evil.
Practical towards its
toward its actual goals. It can actually be put into place. It won't necessarily fulfill its promises, but it will, it can be done. Whereas typically the Democrats' things, if it can be made to function at all, it doesn't function for long, as again Obamacare is demonstrating. But it's one of those things. But at any rate,
now again, I'm very cynical when it comes to politics and politicians. Give me a good statesman. Give me Like, give me somebody who actually does what they say they're going to do and actually does it for their constituents and cares about the country and cares about the goddamn Constitution, which is believe it or not, was written by Freemasons. Yes,
of course it was.
So the idea of equality, that's a Masonic ideal. But when it comes to like politics in general, it's something of division, and it just angers me. Not it angers me in a, well, I don't want to have to like screw you all. I'm gonna like if I vote in Canadian elections, we can do what's called refusing your ballot, which is essentially it gets counted. You spoil your ballot, it doesn't get counted. It's like, well, it didn't exist.
But you can refuse. You can refuse the ballot, and it's counted as a refused ballot.
Exactly. You can, at least in Canada, you can go, like, I can get my ballot, and then I will hand it back to them and say I'm refusing my ballot. The first time it happened, I got looked at strange, and I think I may have talked about this on the show before, and they're like, well, what do you mean you're refusing your ballot? I have a right to be able to refuse my ballot, and you have to count it as refused. And she's like, why would you want to do that? Because this is provincially, and I've got family who works for the, like, high up in the Liberals, so, again, sorry, buddy. I thought all the candidates, like our NDP, which is our kind of more our socialist candidate, just seemed like an idiot. Our PC candidate seemed like a neocon. Like he went down to the States, took all the worst from the Tea Party, brought it up here to Canada, and essentially said, "This is what we're going to do." And it was like laying off 100,000 public servants, and. We're like, well, the Liberals aren't going to do that. They're not saying they're going to do that. Like, well, fuck, that's evil. So people voted strategically to get the Liberals back in. They gave them another majority government. Unfortunately, the Liberals then laid off close to 100,000 people, I believe. So they did the exact same thing that the Conservatives said they were going to do.
What you're saying is that the Liberals and the PCs are doing the same thing as the Democrats and the Republicans. Because when a Democrat gets into office in the United States, they'll promise the world, and then they'll look to the last successful Republican administration and say, okay, what did they do? Copy it.
Pretty much.
Barack Obama basically did all of George W. Bush's campaign, all of his policies. He maintained all of it, even though he came into power claiming he was going to get rid of it. It's humiliating.
So, yeah, and I'm so for me, I'm a cynic. So like if I'm talking politics, it's just based around, it's like I'm looking at the situation like, yeah, it's fucked up.
The thing that I would point out here is the U.S. Constitution was written by Freemasons. The Declaration of Independence. I mean, the whole American Revolution. You want to talk about a revolution carried out by secret societies? Yeah. And the country ran fairly well when Freemasons were running it. Care to guess who the last Freemason in the White House was?
Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford, that's correct. And before that, you have to go back to Harry Truman.
Didn't Truman? Oh well, Truman he won the war. Didn't, if I'm not mistaken, Harry Truman. Because Truman was after American
Truman was
politician.
FDR's vice president, and then won re-election himself.
Okay.
And so but he was actually Grand Master of Missouri, I think it was.
Now I know for Canada. I know for Canada it's a little, and we have one listener. I'm going to ask you this while I'm looking this up. What is your opinion of Dan Brown?
Dan Brown of the Da Vinci Code fame and so on?
Correct.
Okay. He's an entertaining novelist.
So Lee, you heard it here first.
I'm not a huge.
He's an entertaining. He's an entertaining author. We have his opinion.
He's an entertaining novelist. Yeah.
Have you read much of his books, and what do you think as far as his accuracy is concerned?
He's a novelist.
Yeah,
he's making this. Well, actually, in the case of the Da Vinci Code, he was not making stuff up. He was, although I know that he got let off the hook from this. He basically borrowed all the material from what's their name's books, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Mm-hmm.
Which
I tend to refer to as Holy Blood, Holy Cow, and which is a really good example of how not to do research into secret societies. The Priory of Zion, which supposedly dates back to the Crusades, blah blah blah. If they'd actually done the basic research, they would have found that it was founded in 1952 by Pierre Plantard, quote, de Saint Clair. He added that to his name. And that it was never more than a tiny, also ran player in the French esoteric scene. They basically just asked Plantard, well, Tell us about the Priory of Zion. And Plantardo you may have met the kind of elderly occultist who is also an absolute first-rate con man. I've had the great good fortune of knowing some of them myself. It's a real experience. But yeah, so they wound Plantard off, and he just told them all kinds of stuff. And they took it, they wrote it down literally. They said, oh, wow. Except the Bagent and I forget the other two guys, the trio of English filmmakers who wrote Holy Blood, Holy Grail, one of them had this obsession about Christ having descendants, and they kind of dragged that in. And Plantard was horrified. He was actually a devout Catholic. And so there's this entire fandango that they generated around it. And it really takes very little research to find this out, but of course people don't do that research because it's so cool. So you end up with the whole Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Priory of Zion, Ormus business being mass-produced and marketed all over the place. And Dan Brown, who is a very entertaining novelist, picks up the thing and goes, oh, cool, this would make a hell of a story. And it did. But just as it's not really a good idea to take, say, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings as a guide to the prehistory of Europe, I don't know that I would take, Conan the Barbarian as a guide to what life was like during the Ice Ages. I don't know that I'd take the Da Vinci Code any more seriously than that.
And, Game of Thrones can't be used as a complete analog to War of the Roses, although it's close. Now...
That's because Railroad Martin is George R.R. Martin. There's a running joke in science fiction circles referring to him as Railroad Martin. George Martin is going to be borrowing a lot of stuff from history. If you're a competent fantasy writer, you rip off history for everything you can get. Because you want to know, okay, how did nasty political struggles work out in a medieval setting? Well, the Wars of the Roses are right there. Check it out. J.R.R. Tolkien again, the battle on the Pelennor fields where the forces of Rohan and Gondor and the orcs and everyone are fighting. That was largely based on the big battle between the Huns, the Visigoths, and the Romans, the Battle of the Catalonian Plain, which was described in a number of old chronicles that Tolkien, of course, knew extremely well, philologist that he was, and so he borrowed most of the details from that. It's one of the tricks of the trade.
Now, the next question is, do you do voice acting for books? Because you really need to.
I don't. I had not considered that. No, and actually, that's a fun thought because I mentioned earlier in the show that I was doing a fiction project involving stuff on tall ships. I'm actually, the second book in a 7-volume fantasy series of mine has just come out. And this is all for the research on sailing ships is all for book 6. But I think it'd make a really good dramatic presentation. I think it would be very fun to play a role in that, but I'm not really sure how that would happen.
Speaking of books, and I know we went off on a little bit of a tangent here, and
a little bit of a tangent. Well, yes, we've been having.
Well, I'm looking
fun with a lot of tangents.
Well, true, and it's like again, the reason we don't normally talk politics in the show, I'm just like, well, screw it, because at some point you just have to at some point you have to take a stand, and like as I said, like I'm looking at what's going down south. I'm like, okay, I may lose listeners, and I actually been watching our listener. I'm watching the little needle go down from, and I can see the point where it just started to drop. It's like, okay, well...
We talked about politics and people started bailing.
Pretty much.
God, yes.
And it's like, okay, I can understand, but I usually go look at it like, okay, if I'm going on a rant, some people are getting a good goddamn show. And at least I'm keeping my pants on, and I'm not talking about I'm not talking about hermaphrodite frogs or, waving tax returns.
If you're talking about hermaphrodite frogs, I should hope you're keeping your pants on.
Well, we are Canadian. We do things different up here.
Okay. I'm sorry. I should not engage in these cultural assumptions or anything like that. I gotcha.
Now I know with the, I'm gonna have to look at the actual name of the book. I do apologize because when it comes to names, if anybody knows me, I cannot remember them, especially if it's
what's it about?
Coelbern Alphabet, which is going to be
Coelbern Alphabet. Yeah, my new one on the Welsh Bardic alphabet.
Yes. So, first of all, the book is coming out on for those of you still with us. The book is going to be coming out June 8th. I wish that I would have been able to take a look at it, to be able to read it,
Mm-hmm.
to get a full feeling for it. So I would
Mm-hmm.
like I'm coming in this fresh. So please take me through the concept and why you wrote it.
Okay. Basically, we're talking history of Druidry here. Back in the late 18th century, you had the Druid revival had been sort of underway for maybe half a century at most. Various people were getting interested in the legacies of the ancient Druids, the legacies of ancient Celtic peoples, and so on, as an alternative to the dogmatic religion and dogmatic materialism that were the two publicly acceptable ideologies at the time. And there was a mildly crazy Welshman. His actual name was Edward Williams, but he went by the bardic name Iolo Morgannwg, and Iolo, as we can call him. He was brilliant. He was probably the best scholar of medieval Welsh in his time. He was also one of the most brilliant forgers of medieval Welsh poetry in his time. You have to be good. He literally, some of his fakes were not discovered until the 1950s. He was that good. But this guy, he was a heavy-duty opium addict. Laudanum, which is opium and cheap alcohol, was legal in Britain at that time, and
Ooh,
he
that's
used
the dream.
a lot of it.
It's the dream.
Yeah. And he was he had a drug habit. His head was packed full of Welsh mythology and Welsh poetry, and became convinced that the lessons in Welsh poetry that he'd received from some old guys back in Glamorgan had initiated him into these original secrets of the bards passed down from the times of the ancient Druids. And there were a lot of people who were interested. He was kind of, the way Gerald Gardner sort of manufactured Wicca in the 1940s and then mass marketed all over the place thereafter. Iolo Morgannwg was kind of the Gerald Gardner of the 1790s. And he founded the various Druid groups in Britain and in the United, or actually in Britain and Wales, in England, Wales, and then later after his time, a number of them started in the U.S. as well. But one of the things that he passed on was this alphabet. It looks kind of like runes. It's designed to be carved or scratched into wood or stone, so it's straight lines, and so on. It's called the Coelbern. In the usual format as 24 letters, and it was very popular in the Druid scene of the first half of the 19th century, and then it just kind of faded out. And people lost track of it. And the thing is, as with the runes, as with some of the other old alphabets, like the Hebrew alphabet, for example, it's not just an alphabet. Each letter, each of these letters has symbolism. It has meaning. You can use it for a whole range of purposes. You can use it as a divinatory oracle, the way people do rune readings now. But the key to that, what the letters meant, kind of got misplaced. And so, starting when somebody noticed because it turned out he was a forger, because he'd fraudulently written a whole bunch of poetry and other things that was not, and marketed as the works of authentic Welsh bards in the Middle Ages, nobody wanted to talk about him for a long time. And so it was, I think, in the 1970s that people started really poking around his legacy and the Coelbern Alphabet and these things, but nobody could find what the letters meant, what their symbolism was, anything other than just the bare alphabet. So fast forward to 2014, and I was chasing. I'd finished a book on Druidry. I was looking for some interesting puzzles. I was saying, okay, I'm going to see what I can find about the Coelbern. I was poking here and poking there, looking in this, looking in the other, and I finally found a tiny little reference in a footnote in a book of Welsh, a comparative grammar of Welsh published in 1920, I think it was. There was a reference to a book that I had not heard of before in English, an edition and translation of the Dosbarth Idarin Adafod Aur by John Williams Ab Ithil. And I went, oh, John Williams Ab Ithil, that was Iolo's number one, disciple, basically. What's this book? So I was able to find it. It was actually available in Google Books. I downloaded the thing, started paging through it, and my jaw hit the keyboard because there was a nice little table listing the Coelbern letters and their meanings, their sounds, how they worked symbolically, all of it right there. the thing that people have been looking for since the 1970s. It was tucked away in this obscure scholarly work on Welsh grammar from the 14th century that John Williams Eversole had translated and edited and published with a tiny little publishing company. And it was just pure blind chance that I found this. And so, of course, I went to work on it and started writing the book and worked out how to use the thing as an oracle and all this kind of stuff. Had a grand old time. It is, again, it's like the runes. You can use it to cast readings. You can use it for symbolism. You can use it for meditations. All kinds of all the usual things that a symbolic alphabet can be used for. And the book is it's designed for the complete beginner. You do not have to be an initiated druid to open its pages and understand it. It's all laid out very straightforwardly, and I hope it goes someplace. The Coelbern is a nice, elegant system, and as an oracle, it gives good answers. So, yeah.
And if you're going, how would this work in relation to, let's say, using runes or casting, or like casting runes or
tarot cards or
tarot cards
like that,
or what have you? Is it a more of, at least what I would term, more of an active magic, or is it more of a divination?
The version of it that I have covered in this book is mostly divinatory. It's, again, like casting the runes or reading tarot cards. Can it be used in active magic? Of course it can. I give a few references in there, but mostly that's going to need to be developed in another book. I have one of my books, in fact, the one that I just finished when I started working on the Coelbern, The Celtic Golden Dawn, gives a complete system of druidical magic, which is which uses the same, basically much of the same Welsh symbolism that Iolo was working with. And so there is a sequel in the works that will integrate the Coelbern with that and a whole bunch of other stuff. So but that's a couple of years off, because that needs a lot of further work and a lot of testing.
How do you come up with, right, and you're discovering these systems and reworking them, because again you have a vast amount. And when I say vast, again, when we say that he wrote when he wrote the encyclopedia on esoteric works and magic, he actually wrote the encyclopedia on magic and esoteric works.
I'm looking at a copy in the shelf. Yeah. I wrote the encyclopedia. I wrote the Encyclopedia of Secret Societies.
Yeah. So
how do I do it?
Well, yeah, because we had Gordon White. And his name, again, he has one of those names where it's like two syllables and then one syllable, and they're both fairly they're both fairly common. So I always get stuck trying to remember which is first and which is last. He's more of, and he's from Australia. I'm not sure if you know him.
We haven't met.
Okay, but for him it's about a chaos magic to try and reduce probability, to try and arrive at the active ingredient, as we say, is to make chance work in your favor so you can get the result you want. Is this how all magic works, or is there?
No, it's the thing is, nobody. Remember, we're always talking about models. We know that certain things have certain results, and we come up with various theoretical models to explain why that is. If you're a chaos magician, you're probably going to come up with something like Gordon White's theory. There are many different ways to talk about it, and I've explored several of them, and I don't know that any of them are really better than any of the others. It's useful to have a model so you can guide your actions, but the map is not the territory. What we know is that doing certain things produces certain results. Everything else is guesswork and inference.
And for most systems, is it words of power? Are we talking signs and sigils that need to be arranged in a certain way? How or certain like alchemical ingredients, like I know the idea of eye of newt, etc., which can sometimes be laughed at, but there are certain chemicals that can be used or released into the air, which can, let's say, release an aroma. How do these work? Because when I look at magic, I look at it from a standpoint of, okay, it's like how Thor said in the first Thor movie, and I'm going to reference a Marvel. A movie based off of a comic book, which is based off of a mythology that is goodness knows how many years old. With the idea of magic being a science to them, where the idea that you're able to at least alter reality from any standpoint, whether you're talking a quantum level, whether you're talking on a chemical level or a physical level, there's some type of action that you're trying to get, and the combination of either the right symbol, the word, an ingredient, an action, and belief can then manifest that or make that a reality. Whether it's to make somebody fall in love with you, or have money come your way, or give your neighbor a wart, or remove a wart from you if you unfortunately have run into the wrong person multiple times in a vertical, in a horizontal position, that type of thing. Again, that's more Egyptian magic that I'm referencing with that last one. Give me a good rundown of how you would, or from a start to finish, how would you look at a situation, say, how can I apply magic to this, and how would you then apply it in a practical sense?
That's.
I don't think anyone's ever asked. Well, we got all night. We're on YouTube. No, the people come on, they leave, they got to go to bed, they work. They're in England, they're in Australia. We have as much time as you want, except for I think Denver. He's on the East Coast, but
yeah, the thing is, it would depend very much, because I've had training now in half a dozen different magical systems that have theories of magical action that are usually contradictory to one another. It doesn't matter; they all work. What we know is that under certain circumstances, the world as we experience it, which is of course all the world that we can know, the world as we experience it can be shaped by changes in our consciousness.
Okay.
Dion Fortune, who is one of my major guides here, refers to defines magic as the art and science of causing change in consciousness in accordance with will. And everyone says, "Oh, you mean psychology?" Well, not necessarily, because everything you experience is filtered through consciousness. Everything that you will, the entire universe, as far as you are concerned, is a reflection in your consciousness. You can never get outside that. And so the universe is, to some extent, flexible that way. We don't know how flexible. What are the outer limits? Nobody knows yet. We know there are some things you probably won't be able to do very well by magic. We know there are some things you can do very easily. Then there's the gray area in between. If it's something, now I'm gonna insert something here as a bit of a warning, because you mentioned, for example, making people fall in love with you. Lots of people do that. Lots of people try to do that. Love spells like that have a long reputation of blowing up in people's faces. What typically happens is that you put a love whammy on somebody, okay, and they feel for maybe 20 minutes in unexpected warm fuzzies toward you, and then they go, and then unless there's some good reason for them to feel warm fuzzy toward you, they go, yuck, what am I thinking? And they'll never have anything to do with you again. Then the spell rebounds, you fall hopelessly in love with them, and it takes months or years to wear off. That's the usual rebound. Similarly, spells to make money, you can do it very well if you do it the right way.
Okay.
But the right way is, I want an opportunity to earn money. If you say, I want money to come to me without my having to earn it, what you're actually asking for is for the world to become less fair. Because for you to get money you didn't earn, someone else has to earn money and not get it, right? So the most likely way in which the universe will become less fair is that you will be ripped off. You will be cheated. You will lose money. Everybody I know who has done that kind of gimme money spell has ended up losing their shirt as a result. So if you do, I want an opportunity to earn money, that's another matter. You can do that and make it work, and you'll be fine. Similarly, if you want to do a love spell, there's actually an extremely effective love spell that anybody can do. It is infallible. It works every single time. It is unstoppable. It consists of making yourself more lovable. Most people who are having problems with love, it's because they're not actually lovable people. And so you actually have to change yourself rather than trying to force somebody else to get, to feel warm emotions toward you that you have done nothing to earn. Make yourself lovable, and people will fall in love with you all the time. You can use magic for that. You can change your self-image. You can rework how you relate to the world. You can invoke forces into yourself that will reshape how you relate to people of your preferred gender or what have you. And people will fall in love with you because you're lovable. Otherwise, it's not going to work so well. So anytime I'm looking at a magical situation, okay, here's the situation in my life. I want it to change. There are things wrong here. There are things I do not like. I do not think, okay, what can I change in the universe? I think, what can I change in myself? How am I relating to the universe in a way that is setting up these conflicts? Because that's usually what's going on. Most of us constantly kick ourselves in our own backside all the time. And if we simply stop doing that, life works really well.
It's like the law of attraction. I know some life, like, the people will swear by the law of attraction or the secret. If you probably know what the book is, going, it's that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
it's still doing this. I got to see the law of attraction at work when my wife and I were living in Southern Oregon. We were in a town that was very heavily New Age. It was kind of a sort of a yuppie ghetto in the middle of southwestern Oregon, and all these people were piling into the law of attraction and trying to use it to make lots of money in the real estate market. This was in 2005, 2006, 2007. Okay, and then the market dropped out from underneath them, and they all went broke. The universe does not want you to be rich. Now, if you want to be rich, you can do it. Any of our listeners who wants to become a millionaire, you can do that. All you have to do is change your attitude toward money. If you look at every dollar that comes your way and say, okay, this is a tool to make me more money, you'll become a millionaire. Every cent becomes an instrument for your goal. If all your actions and all your choices and everything in your life zeroes in on the process of becoming a millionaire, you will become a millionaire. You may become a billionaire. But most people don't have that singleness of intent. They say, well, I want to become a millionaire and I also want to spend $1 million. Well, you can't do both. You can either, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Take your pick.
Well, this is...
So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is... I'm going to digress here for a little bit of a second.
Please.
I'm trying to quit smoking. I've been a smoker since the age of 15. I've tried everything. The patch, the gum. I've got the vape, which work I do on the show, but have not been able to quit. I'll announce this on air, and because my mom knows at this point. We're thinking December 9th, I will actually become a father. So my wife is pregnant. We found it a while ago. We haven't announced it. I've kind of hinted it on the show. Thank you. Because of that, I'm like, okay, well, I got to quit smoking, and I know deep down inside why I need to quit and why I have to quit. So I've got a. But you
don't actually want to quit.
No. So I went to go see my I've got a client. I do advertising and web design, and he's a life coach. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll do a little of exchange. We like each other. We kind of see eye to eye. We get each other on a personal level, as well as a professional level. We know where we're coming from. We're very good with good like that. And he's like, okay. So what I'm going to do is, we'll have a co-creation meeting. And you'll do an hour and a half of work, and we'll co-create, and that'll be off the books. And then I'll coach you with and I thought it was going to be hypnotherapy. No, it's like neurolinguistic programming with a very heavy amount, because he's traveled all over the world and done work and study with all of these all these mystics and holy people from anywhere from Hawaii to Tibet, you name it. He's been there, and he's like, okay, well. So we go through this entire process, and I understand the whole Tony Robbins thing, so I know where he's going with that. But there came a certain point in time where there was a lot of intent in terms of what I was looking to do, the person I wanted to be, and then all of a sudden this breathing technique and this meditation that I was going through, and I could just feel like the spot right behind the bridge of the nose, and it's like if you've ever hyperventilated and your fingers have gone numb. It was like having that behind my, behind my head. And I've talked to enough people who know to at least understand that that's basically my third eye going, that's my pineal gland essentially doing its thing. And, there was a real cathartic experience where I'm sitting there going, okay, well, if I have to quit smoking, I know the person I need to be, or the person I want to be, and see myself as the best version of myself. And it's like, I know what I need to be able to do to quit, which is not just quitting smoking, it's being able to dominate the cigarettes themselves, dominate the concept of smoking. So now I have a pack of cigarettes, an unopened pack of cigarettes, that I'm wrapping in messages basically saying, okay, I'm leaving everything covered except for the cellophane, the wrapper, the little string that opens it. And it's basically saying, if you open this pack of cigarettes, you're a bitch. You can be better than that. And at the time that this revelation was going on, and we're going through this entire this meditation process, there's this sense of, holy shit! It's not just a matter of, okay, if I can quit smoking, I can fucking manifest anything. And there's a certain amount of power in that. I'm sitting in the meeting, and he's going, it's like, do you want, like, it's like, is this the man you want to be? Do you want to be that man? I think he was talking about, smoking cigarettes. I'm saying there, like, are you sure you want me to become the man that you're asking to come out right now? Because it's like, if I can manifest anything, and I can make anything happen, and if I think it, I can do it, that could be, it's, there's a certain responsibility with that power. And it's like, okay, well, you step through the door, and it's like my eyes are closed, and it's like, imagine a solar eclipse with a with the moon completely over top of it. And it's kind of the equivalent of what your peripheral vision's like, and it's just white light all on the outside and dark, and just this blinding white light in the center. So you're talking all-seeing eye, right? You step through, and you're like, okay, you make the conscious choice to commit to this action, commit to this manifestation of your will out into the world. And it's like stepping out from a dark room to the outside, where all of a sudden you're transitioning from complete darkness to light, and it's like you're essentially having like your nose to nose with the surface of the sun. Again, that could have been the deep breathing exercises, and it could have been a lot of DMT or lack of oxygen, a lot of CO2. I don't know, but the feeling of having that power and ability to change reality no matter what, and then realizing that if you do it, there's going to be consequences. You're going to have to make choices, difficult ones, to get what you want.
You will be responsible for the consequences.
Exactly. And what I'm saying, okay, well, I'm asking a question. He asked me a question, and I said, are you sure you want me to do that? It's me asking myself, are you sure you want to take that step because of those consequences? Can you accept the consequences of having done these things and manifested and be, taking your will to conquer this one small thing? And when you do that, you have that discipline. Well, then the entire world is pretty much at your fingertips. And whether it's actually is or not, I'm not crazy, but that's the feeling you get.
But yeah, the thing is, the important thing, and I think you've got a good coach there, simply because it's not just changing one thing.
No.
Something like a habit, like smoking, is woven through all kinds of other things in your life. And if you're going to change the habit, you're going to change your life from top to bottom. Everything will change. Nothing will remain the same.
Nope.
And that's just the way it is.
Now, the idea of consequences is something that I've always found supremely fascinating, and it always it's the argument that now, first of all, is the law of three. If you do anything, then you get 3 times that back. Is that a general accepted principle?
No, it's specific. That's specifically that's a Wiccan tradition, and most people would consider it an extreme generalization. But certainly, everything you do shapes who you are, and who you are shapes what kind of experiences you get. And
this is going to sound very basic, and this is also somewhat curiosity, but also I just would love to be able to have those who say, this dark, evil, magic is out there. Okay, so the believing in balance and believing that the world can be a certain way, and that if you're going to do bad, you're going to get bad back. That if you're going to, the argument I have is, okay, well, they're having some type of child sex ritual to empower themselves with X, Y, Z. All right, even just going by just basic, if action gives you an equal reaction, and if we can go along that same idea of thinking, if you're going to do some bad shit to a child, which is essentially hurting one of the most innocent things on the planet, it doesn't matter what kind of power you get short term, you're going to get screwed so bad by the universe for doing it.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for a world of hurt.
Yeah.
Every competent occultist I know of recognizes basically that you have to approach things in a manner that says, okay, what do I want in life? What I want in life is what I need to make happen in the universe, and that means happening to other people as well. And so, it's if you go around doing, putting whammies on people, this is what I call the raspberry jam principle. Okay, if you've ever tried spreading raspberry jam on bread, you're going to get some on your own fingers. Okay, if you're going to spread magical energies on the world, you're going to get the same. You're going to get those energies on yourself. Those energies pass through you, and they will shape your life too. So if you're moving nasty energies through your own energy body, that's going to affect your life. It's going to radiate out. It's going to shape your experience of the world, and your life is going to become a smoking crater if you keep it up. On the other hand, if you do beneficial things to the world, beneficial things will happen in your life. It is that simple. Now, I know people who insist that doesn't happen. It can't be. Blah blah blah. Every one of them who practices magic, again, their lives are smoking craters. Their lives are disasters because, just because you don't believe in these things doesn't mean they're not true.
And that goes back to the fear thing. If you believe that, if you're afraid that rich industrialists who will sell you, Big Macs and fries that if you eat 3 times a day are going to make you fat, are also behind the scenes, sacrificing children to get more power and influence so that they can sell you more burgers and fries that are going to make you fat, chances are maybe you should hit the gym. There's a certain way to be able to do that. It's like if you're afraid, don't put the Big Mac down. And I have a McDonald's near my house. It's great for breakfast. So convenient, so reasonably priced. The McGriddles are just it's like having it's like eating pizza for breakfast, but like day old pizza that's really, really thick and greasy. So it's like that. But at the same time, I know it's bad for me. If I'm where was I going with this? Because now I'm just like hungry.
Well, the thing that I point to cycle back to the evil Big Mac conspiracy.
The evil Big Mac. Okay, go. Yeah. So
the evil Big Mac conspiracy. The thing about conspiracy, are there conspiracies? Of course there are.
It's how people have kept power for thousands of years.
And the thing is, there are always conspiracies, and they're always competing with one another. That's why everyone gets into these big tangles about, well, who actually runs the world? Nobody, because there are all of these different competing groups that are using this or that or another power basis to try to maximize their own benefit. That's the way things are. But the thing is, when people become fixated on conspiracies, very often it's to avoid having to take responsibility for their own lives. Again, it's not, it's these evil people who are doing rituals to make me eat Big Macs. Really?
Well, no. Well, at the same time,
maybe instead you should just go somewhere else for lunch.
Well, it's personal responsibility.
Power.
It's personal responsibility.
It's personal responsibility.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing. Yeah, on the one hand, personal responsibility. On the other hand, there's the terror that maybe nobody runs the world. There's the terror that the world isn't actually under anyone's control, that it's just doing its own thing, and nobody can stop it or make it any different. It's just going to do what it's going to do. That's scary. And so one way around that is that people will get caught up in the idea that rich industrialists are sacrificing children to sell you Big Macs, because that at least gives you the vicarious sense that the universe is under someone's control.
They would rather believe in evil dark forces than no forces at all.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is, so many of the people I know who are deeply into conspiracy theory also claim to be into New Age beliefs, and they're saying, well, we create our own reality. Okay, why are you creating a reality that's full of evil space lizards? What are you doing in a state of consciousness where that's your reality?
Thank you.
And yeah, exactly. And watching people kind of writhe around that one is it's entertaining. But it really is an important thing, because people actually people love their space lizards. They want their space lizards. Because space lizards mean that it's not you. Space lizards mean it's everything someone else's fault, and the universe is under control, and you don't actually have to deal with living in a universe that is not under control, that nobody controls, that's going its own way, and that doesn't care.
Well, for instance, this is a perfect example, and I'm not going to name any names here to try and avoid from getting sued. Just putting that out there. Okay, well, because actually, this was a situation that I ran into a couple of days ago. And if I name people, they're in my city and they can sue they will sue the living fuck out of me because they can.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to say person X.
Okay, so essentially, the new minimum wage was increased, and here in Ontario, it's gone up to $15, or at least a $1.50 US with some gum, and maybe like a button or something from your shoe. So not very much in your standards, but for I think we were like $11.50, so it's going up $3.50 over the next couple of years. Now every single time the minimum wage goes up, restaurateurs lose their freaking minds because they're like, oh my God, our small businesses are going to go out of business. Like small businesses are going to close and prices are going to go up. You're going to spend like $12, $13 for a pint of beer. I'm like, well, okay, well,
and it never happens.
Well, no, it doesn't. Here's my rationale. We all the idea of a $15 minimum wage has been talked about in every single American and Canadian major city and province and state, at least that I know of, for the last couple of years. If you've opened up a restaurant, and recently, in the last, and again, I worked with restaurants for a long time. I've one of my favorite clients who they actually catered my wedding, my most successful. Did all the branding, helped with the interior, did the designs for everything, and then I became a regular patron. And they've been it's going on 5 years. They're sustainable because they understand that you have to differentiate yourself in a market. And also, I gave them a really good marketing plan, and I analyzed everybody, took in every single threat into account. Now, if you are opening a restaurant, and in your business plan, you do not have increasing minimum wage, and you have to do a worst case scenario here, like not a best. People want to think the best. Hope isn't a goddamn strategy. I'm sorry, it isn't.
No,
it's not a strategy.
No, it's not a strategy at all. It's an abdication of strategy.
So if you're saying, well, okay, well, the $15 an hour is going up, and we're gonna, our dollar, our doors are gonna close. Okay. So you didn't take this into account in your SWOT analysis for your market, your market report, or at least your market analysis for your business plan, which essentially means you were negligent in your, in your ability to plan your business, and you spent all of this money and all of this, all of this shit, and you're now you're up shit's creek because you didn't have a contingency for it, and now your profits, which are already thin in an industry that already underpays its staff and expects its customers to subsidize because you don't want to pay a living wage because your profits are already close to nothing, you're maybe you shouldn't be in business. If capitalism and entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur, I believe one thing: it doesn't matter what happens outside of your business. Anything you say is an excuse, except for, I should have worked harder, I should have looked at this, I should have seen this, I should have planned better, I should have hired better. Anything, it's your responsibility. The government doesn't run your business. You run your business.
Well, and the other thing that nobody seems to take into account, okay, if the minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour, what's the other thing? Yes, you have to pay more wages. What's the other thing that happens? All the people who are out there making on minimum wage jobs, all of a sudden have a lot more money to spend. And that means they might, shudder the thought, actually go out to dinner more often. Yeah,
or pay their bills.
You see, that's yeah, exactly. This is the thing. The flip side of a minimum wage increase is, Henry Ford, the automobile magnate, was, I'm sure he was a nasty man in many ways, but he had one very, very important insight, which is that if you don't pay your employees enough to allow them to buy your product, you're doing it wrong. And so he boosted his employees' wages way above prevailing standards so that they could afford to buy his cars, and that's why Ford Motor Company became, in its time, the largest car company in the world, because he understood that basically a consumer economy cannot survive if the consumers have no money to spend.
When the rich people have all the money, like if the rich people have
if the rich people have all the money, you have a surplus of money available for investment, which drives down interest rates so that you don't get any return on investment, and you have a deficit of money available for consumption, which means that you have a production crisis. All you have to do is increase wages, and basically make sure that more of the money in circulation ends up in the pockets of consumers, which means not the rich, because when the rich get money, they invest it. When the poor get money, they spend it. That's why you want lots of money in the hands of the poor. In a situation like this one, where we have an investment surplus and a consumption deficit.
Now, okay, Kevin.
I know. This is simple.
Yeah, and I know
Kevin.
Totally
simple.
Well, the thing is, like, Kevin in chat is saying, say hello to automation. I'll make one, and yes, it's a concern, and at some point, like the biggest things for automation are fast food and transportation. Transportation will never be automated. A big wheeler until you can actually have a Skynet level intelligence behind the wheel of a big rig. It's not going to, because you need somebody who's going to inspect that car, that motor vehicle at every single juncture that it's supposed to be to ensure that it's at optimal operating capacity to go from the long distances it does. The only person who can do that, until you get somebody who can actively make decisions as fast as a human can, you're not going. It won't happen. You're going to still have somebody, maybe pay them less, but they're still going to be behind the wheel. In fast food, McDonald's actually hired more people after their automation. And I'm sorry, I've been to McDonald's with the automated tellers. Half the time they don't work, and it actually takes longer to order from those things than it does to wait in line and order from the person directly.
Now, here's the other thing. Automation looks really profitable, but that's because there is a galaxy of perverse incentives primarily in the tax codes that subsidize automation and penalize employing people. I don't know how things work in Canada, but here in the United States, if you want to hire somebody, you don't just have to pay their salary. You have to pay a whole bunch of money into Social Security. This is if you're an employer.
That's
okay?
the same thing.
You've got a business, you've got a restaurant. Let's say you want to hire somebody. You have to pay their wages. Okay, that's fine. You also have to pay into their Social Security. You have to pay workman's comp. All of these additional fees that are piled onto the simple cost of hiring a worker, which makes it less economically advantageous to hire somebody. On the other hand, if you automate, you can depreciate the automation. So you're actually getting subsidized for automation and penalized for hiring people. If you remove those perverse incentives, okay, so that the only cost to the employer for hiring somebody is the wages that he or she has to pay them, then you're going to see a lot less automation because it doesn't make as much economic sense. Human beings are still, for most business-related applications, superior because they're much more flexible and they could do things like make snap judgments, work around problems. You don't have to completely reprogram them, every time some minor little thing goes wrong. And this cult of automation, the notion that automation always makes economic sense, it's a superstition. It's a superstition based on the mythology of perpetual progress, and it has nothing to do with the real world. And I could very easily see us ending up with a society where all the big corporations have followed that blindly into dysfunction and bankruptcy because everything's automated and none of it works and nobody uses it. And so you go under the table with some kind of little bitty business that actually has people,
okay,
and can actually meet your needs.
Now, I know that there is, at least in going back to Lee here in chat, who stated that that Ford, there was apparently a hoax about Ford that he'd given out the protocols with the Model T, but they may have been a hoax. Are you aware of anything regarding that?
Oh, no, the thing is Henry Ford was an anti-Semite. Okay, he was. As I said, he was. Lots of people are most human beings are problematic. Most human beings do at least something somewhere in their lives that's pretty raunchy or pretty horrible or what have you. And if you want to say, well, this person did that horrible thing, therefore we're going to ignore everything else that they ever did or said, that's very comforting if you want to kind of preen yourself on your own state of self-righteous virtue. But, I'm sure 100 years from now people will look at something you did and say, he was evil, therefore we should hate him for the rest of eternity. That's really stupid. This is what I call newspeak thinking. Do you remember 1984? Where they had this language called newspeak, where there was good and ungood. Those were the only terms of approval and disapproval they had. Every other shade of meaning was evaporated, good and ungood. And that was, by the way, good means like politically compliant. It means all the different things. It's all narrowed down. So someone who is good cannot be ungood. Someone who is ungood cannot be good. Sure, you can point to the fact that Henry Ford was an anti-Semite, and that he had certain other nasty habits. But does that mean that he was wrong to say that you should pay your employees a living wage? No, it does not. This is another of the reasons why I say that people are really dumb these days. Because that kind of thought, well, here's something he did wrong, therefore we should all give him his 2 minutes hate and then ignore him. That kind of thinking would not have passed muster for 5 seconds in 1858. And I want to know why we've become so stupid these days that people can say, well, this person did something wrong once. And that's somehow an argument.
It's an entire cycle of, I think it's honestly our society as a whole is considerably more narcissistic. And, there's the there's this entire trying to shift blame back and forth, and it's like, okay, well, your bad outdoes my good, and there's what is it? The adage, the narcissist's prayer. It didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't that bad. If it was, then it's not a big deal. If it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. That's essentially it, and that's pretty much what's being played out in the news. It's like, okay, so
well, I think
do you know?
Well,
you don't have a TV. So
I don't have a TV.
Okay, well, have you heard the whole Kathy Griffin thing?
How do you think I'm able to write all these books and get all these other things done and play a musical instrument and have a successful marriage and all the other things I do with my time? I don't flush my life away staring at a picture tube. It's really that simple.
But I'm looking at 3 right now, and if I didn't have them, I wouldn't have the show. But I can tell you, if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to work as fast as I do. At the same time, I wouldn't be able to read Reddit.
But the thing, the thing is, right now you're looking into screens because that's part of what you do. Okay.
Yeah.
I write on a computer because publishers no longer take paper manuscripts. Okay, you've got to submit electronically. Okay, I write a computer. And then when I'm finished, I turn it off and I go do something else. I've known so many people who just sit there staring at the screen for hours, watching television as drool puddles in their laps. Maybe that's something we need to look into when we wonder why people are so clueless these days.
Okay, did you hear about this whole Kathy Griffith, or Katie Griffin? I forget her name. She's a D-list celebrity. She got fired from CNN, and she did a joke, or I think it was a joke. I never actually seen it myself. I've seen pictures, but I don't understand the whole context. But the situation is, she was in front of a screen with white behind her, and essentially she was holding a fake severed head of Donald Trump, and it was like all bloody, and it looked like somebody had cut off Donald Trump's head, which I wouldn't. I may not like the guy, but at the same time, he's got a family, he's got kids, and you don't want harm to come to anybody. And his kid was watching it, and he thought it was his dad, and he freaked right out. I'm like, you traumatized a kid? Like, the kid's like he's rich as shit. Like, but goddamn, he's 11 years old. Like, what has he done? And he's freaking out. And people are going absolutely wild. They don't look at, like, some people who are smart looked at it saying, okay, well, his son actually saw that, and that's bad, and that's why it's out of taste, because you took a public figure, and his family was directly affected and possibly traumatized because of it, and that's that's a little bit too close to home. At the same time, you also have some states where Obama had effigies hung up, like it was the early 1900s. And it's like,
I know,
you can't, like, I'm sorry, you have to if you're going to condemn one thing, you have to condemn both, because both are wrong
across the board. But these days, that's one of the things that's going on down on this side of the border, and it's a very spooky thing if you know your way around history. The kind of blind rage that's being poured by people on both sides of the political spectrum toward their enemies. The only time I can think of in American history we've had that again is the run-up to 1861, which is the beginning of our Civil War.
Oh, I called it.
It was something like a dozen years ago. I was actually in London, Ontario, at I think it was London, someplace right around there, at a college doing a talk. And people were talking about the United States, and so on. I said, hold it. What you don't realize is that the United States is moving toward a civil war. People stared at me as though, your Canadian school kids or college students stared at me as though I had suddenly sprouted a second head. It was incomprehensible to them. The United States is a very violent society, and it's a society under extreme strain right now.
Yep.
Just extreme strain. There's enormous tension, enormous political tension, enormous economic tension, enormous suffering, and it's moving toward an explosion. And so I hope that all our Canadian listeners are ready to deal with possibly having a failed state on their southern border in the near future. I hope all of our American listeners are getting ready to hit the ground.
Well, first thing, and this isn't just as a fellow Freemason, but because if you do come here, I want you to teach me how to grow a beard that big. My house is always open. I got a couch.
Thank you.
It's fairly comfortable. My cat will try and sleep in your head, and maybe my dog will bug you for treats all the time, but it's fairly comfortable here. Except in
thank you.
November.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If I ever end up as a refugee, I will keep that very well in mind.
Just watch out, because even here in Ottawa, between like November and March, you're like, we get minus 40 degrees Celsius. It's pretty shitty. But that's
what I've heard.
I called, and I was talking to fellow podcasters. We had a group that I had to step away from due to the fact that I got a kid coming, which is taking all my time. And I looked at
Just wait until he's out.
Well,
you think you're taking all your time now?
You have kids? I'm calling you for advice.
No.
Okay.
No, but I'm basing this on everybody I know who's had kids.
Now,
you will wonder what time is.
Oh God!
For the first couple of years.
I went back to college at 27. Trust me, it's I didn't sleep. But I looked at them, and they all thought I was crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the situation after this entire Russia thing started coming out. I'm like, okay, so you've got an entire polarized, and again, you also have to understand this is an announcement that I'm going to make on this show that probably no one will hear immediately live, but tens of thousands of people will hear in a couple of weeks once it actually gets downloaded and disseminated. I live in Ottawa, and I have, again, not because I'm in the deep state, but I have friends who are, let's say, they used to make a very good Russian accent, and coming from Ottawa, they're may or may not have been part of some organizations that worked in certain fields that certain skills became useful.
We do not talk about in public because it is just not done. I understand.
I again swear to God, this is like on the head of my unborn child. I asked him this question. And again, I don't ask them because they said, it's like, can you tell me any stories? He just looks at me going, and this is the most nicest, gentle, kindest, most assuming man you've ever met in your entire life. He's retired. And he looks at me going, you could just see this look in his eyes going, no, I can't tell you anything. And I left it at that. So, and this man I trust, and I trust implicitly, and I didn't ask him any specifics, but I said, in your experience, and he worked in certain fields during the height of the Cold War as doing what he was doing. And I looked at him and said, you have a lot of experience with this? And he just looked at me and said, I may. Didn't confirm or deny. And I said, and I asked him flat out, in your experience knowing the Russian KGB, the way that they acted, the way that Kompromat does, and I'm Croatian. And the reason that I may freak out about the whole Trump thing, my parents are, at least my father is, he's an immigrant from this country, from Croatia, during the height of communist Yugoslavia, where saying you were Croatian, speaking Croatian, and singing nationalistic Croatian songs would make you disappear. And he essentially escaped because at one point he was out working, and the secret police came because, well, my dad was like me, he's a shit disturber. And I loved him to death because he taught me not to be able to take shit. And I always looked down at him when I was a kid and thought he wasn't cool, and I realized, well, fuck, he actually came to this country because at some point the secret police came for him and said, well, we're gonna take you out and put you in jail or you would disappear. And if that had happened, I wouldn't have been here. He came back. My mom said, you got to get the fuck out of here, because his mom said, you got to get the fuck out of here because they're going to come and get you, and I don't know what'll happen to you after that. So he got out of the country, came to Canada, and got involved with the people who actually wanted Croatia to be a free country, because even though it was a fucked up country during World War II, and there was a lot of bad shit that happened in that part of the world, at the end of the day, the people who were in the 60s and hippie and free, and they wanted to be able to speak Croatian, say they were Croatian, all that shit. There's a lot of shit that I heard about after that, and I understand how the secret police in Slavic countries works. So when it comes to really devious stuff happening and a lot of backstabbing and a lot of espionage in terms of like James Bond stuff, maybe the gadgets aren't the same, but in terms of the cloak and dagger, it was 10 times to 100 times worse than any James Bond movie, and nobody will ever know.
So you asked this guy who's very familiar with Russian equivalent of Slavic secret police,
And I looked at him and I said, okay, so in your opinion, from your expertise and knowing he was very experienced, I said, okay, do you think Donald Trump was like? Do you think he was complicit? Like, do you think he colluded? And he looks at me going, just kind of looks down, thinks for a second, going, Yeah, I do. And it's not going to end well. And I'm like, okay. And yeah. So the
thing that I have to say though about the yelling about Russia, most of what I see from the American left right now is a desperate attempt of people to somehow evade the fact that Hillary Clinton ran the most incompetent political campaign I have seen in my lifetime. And I remember presidential campaigns going back to Hubert Humphrey. She did a dismally bad job. She was making the decisions. Okay? Not only that, she made all the same mistakes in 2016 that she'd made running against Barack Obama in 2008. So she was either unable or unwilling to learn from her errors.
Obama admitted to doing cocaine and he still got elected.
Exactly. And the thing, and Donald Trump was Donald Trump, and he still got elected. Okay, no, she is a miserably bad campaigner, and she ran an epically inept campaign and lost. But the Democrats aren't willing to deal with that, and of course she's not willing to deal. She's busy trying to find someone else to blame. I mean, it's gotten to the point that even the liberal press is saying, Ms. Clinton, you're kind of avoiding major issue here, which is that you lost, and here are the decisions you made that cost you one of those things. But at any rate, whatever was actually going on, was or was not actually going on, I don't imagine we'll ever know. It's become a complete flustered cluck. He said, she said, disinformation from all sides. And everyone will end up believing the story that appeals to their emotions.
Well, my prediction is if he gets impeached, and it's not going to happen. Like everyone's saying, like, oh, he's going to get impeached, and all this information's coming out. We live in an age of instantaneous information transmission. It is what Caesar originally would have loved, which is to be in every single home, and to be able to see every single person, every single citizen, to know what's going on. We live in that world now. And they said it's like, look into Windows. Well, guess what? Windows is on most systems, and Bill Gates made it, and NSA has a backdoor into it, apparently, if you believe some people.
Oh, yeah.
They can do crazy shit with computers nowadays. My prediction was that if he's impeached, which I said was probably going to happen about 2019, because he's like 2018 again, as I said, Democratic politicians, they now have found their balls. For whatever reason, you've got a couple of guys who found their balls, and they're putting up a very good show of like talking sternly. The Republicans, there are some that are like very concerned, deeply concerned, super concerned. There's maybe one, holy shit, is this crazy? And then the rest are essentially complicit, because they're supporting potentially somebody who could be, who could have obstructed justice or could have committed espionage, whatever the accusation is, and I don't know one way or another, in all honesty. I wasn't there, I'm not him. But if he does, because the country is so polarized, and it's not based on southern states and northern states, because there is a very large mix of Democrat and Republican, left-leaning, right-leaning in every single state. It's just which state takes most. Now, if you talk about, let's say, Wyoming, which doesn't actually exist, now... I'm sorry. Do you know anybody from Wyoming? I sure as hell don't. I'm like it does. Like I'm sorry. It's on a map. It doesn't exist. Holy shit! You have?
I've actually been there, so I can vouch for the fact that it at least existed at one point.
Are you sure you're not Illuminati? Because that sounds like something an Illuminati would say. I'm just putting that out there now.
Just okay.
You have but the country's the last Civil War you had, it was about slavery, and even anybody says it wasn't just about slavery. No, it was about slavery. It was about much more. It was about slavery. There were other things involved. It was about slavery, but it was not just about slavery. It's very easy to flatten it out, because it was also about economic policy. It was about the balance of power within the different regions of the United States. It was about it's very easy to work it out to a simple answer. Was it about slavery? Yes, but not just about slavery. Okay. And I can understand from my own research is that it wasn't the slavery that was used, because it was the poor people who fought on the front lines. It was the one they were the soldiers. The idea of slavery was around that. Okay, so these slaves, and the idea was basically put that if you were black, you were you were property, which essentially means the poorest shit poor hillbilly from God knows where, who is like 4 generations of inbreeding in, who doesn't have a dime to his name, and who shoots muskrats, in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, 1800 some United States, that slave is still worse off and still lower on the totem pole of society than you are. So when the news came around that we're going to free everybody and equal rights is by law is going to be enshrined for the slaves, that notion was ingrained into people. So it wasn't the fact that, we're going to lose all this money and, the states, states' rights and this and that. It was, the idea of states' rights was used as a scapegoat for people to be able to continue to use their money and keep the economy going. But the fear of status loss was used on the poor population to get them to fight. And they lost badly.
They lost catastrophically.
Yeah, they lost catastrophically, yes.
But again, there are very few events in American history about which more mythology exists on all sides than the Civil War. It was a much more complex phenomenon than many people think. For example, the really poor parts of the Deep South, Western North Carolina, what's now West Virginia, some of the others, those homes went Union. That's why we have a state of West Virginia, because the entire dirt poor western half of Virginia split off in 1862, refused to join the Confederacy. Okay. Western North Carolina, which is way up in the mountains, and it's very much muskrat shooting territory. Okay. That was a bastion of Union sentiment all through the war. Again, one of the there's history. We pretend we don't have mythology nowadays, and so we usually substitute history for it. I'm sure if I knew as much about Canadian history as you know about American history, I could probably point out examples, or I might very well say things about Canadian history that would have you dropping your face into your hands, going, no, it's much more complex.
I actually probably know more about American history than I do about Canadian, and you probably know more about Canadian and American history than I do. So just. Because most Canadians do learn, but still go ahead.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. But yeah, the thing to keep in mind is that, again, the Civil War and everything having to do with it, since the day after Appomattox, has been a mythological football that people have grabbed and run with in different directions. For like 3 generations after the Civil War, you knew you were in the house of a Republican family if you saw a copy of Ulysses S. Grant's autobiography on the shelves. I mean, the Republicans were the anti-slavery party back then. Okay, they were the left-wing party. The Democrats were the conservatives. Now, things changed, you bet, but that's how it was back in the 19th century. And so, there, as everywhere, things get flopped around. Parties change. They change their intentions without changing their names. Different ideologies move in. For example, the reason the Democrats became the Liberal Party was in 1932. Franklin Roosevelt and a group of people basically seized it from Northeastern Democrats. Basically seized control of the party. They staged a coup. In effect, it's pretty much what Bernie Sanders was trying to do. And they managed to get control of the party and ran FDR into the White House, where he remained for 4 terms, and completely redefined the Democratic Party in the process of getting rid of a lot of the old members. And so, history is complex, and it's very easy to settle into one factor and say, well, this was caused by that. That was caused by this, and usually, again, it's a good thing or it's an ungood thing, and it's never that simple in the real world. Similarly, I mean, here's an example from my own experience. I live in a town right now in the north central Appalachians. It is dirt poor. Used to be a mill town, lots of industry. All that went away in the 1970s. These days, it's got like 20% of the population lives below the poverty line. And one of the really poor neighborhoods is directly south of me. I go there all the time. I walk through it on the way to the laundromat, on the way to the drugstore. There are various other things further down Industrial Boulevard that I go to. So I'm known. People know who I am. I know who they are. It's a very poor neighborhood. It's a mixed race neighborhood, by which I don't just mean that here's some white people, here's some black people. I mean that on a summer evening when people are sitting on the porches, the people who are sitting on any given porch are not all the same skin color. And that's actually increasingly common in America these days among the poor. It's in the middle class that the color line is fairly strong. So you get in. So here you are in this really dirt poor neighborhood, which has a church every 3 blocks and an abandoned house every 3 doors. Okay, it is a picture of American poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It is, as I said, very multiracial. You see a lot of mixed race children running around. People marry, and this kind of stuff. That was the first neighborhood in town to put up Trump signs. It put up more of them than any other neighborhood in town. All of the Hillary Clinton signs in this town were in the rich neighborhood up on Fort Hill. All of them. That's not something you will hear from the media. That's not something you'll hear from the general discourse, that a huge number of people who voted for Trump were the poor, were the people who've been on the losing side of the economic policies that all of the middle-class people have supported, all of the global economy, all the stuff that we've heard talked about in such enthusiastic terms, all of that was built on the backs of poor Americans of all colors. And that's why, what was it? A third of the Hispanic male vote and a quarter of the Hispanic female vote voted for Donald Trump. That's why Trump had a lot of votes from people of color. Not a lot of black votes. I think he had like 14%. He still had 14%. There are economic issues that nobody wants to talk about down here. There are issues of power and of the distribution of power in society that nobody wants to talk about, because the people who are yelling about, we need to overthrow the system, they're the beneficiaries of the system. They're the people who've been benefiting from the last 40 years of economic transformations. That the global economy is great if you're in the middle class, and that all your consumer goods have gotten really cheap because they're being imported from third world hellholes where they're made in sweatshops for $1 a day. And bringing in lots of illegal immigrants to drive wages down is great if you're in the middle class, because it means your consumer goods cost less, it means your services cost less, you go to the hairdresser, it costs less. It's great if you're middle class. If you're part of the working class majority in this country, you've been screwed, blued, and tattooed by those same policies for the last 40 years. And nobody on the left will talk about that. The left that used to be all, we got to, improve the lot of the workers, they could care less about the working class these days. As long as they're, comfortable in their cozy little lifestyles, they could care less. And so you have the left that is focused on the kind of the middle class, and a right that's focused on the rich, and the poor who have nobody to speak for them at this point. Especially the working poor. That's the situation we have in America these days, and nobody's talking about it. My blog, my former blog, which is now sunsetted out, I'm getting a new one going. The Archdruid Report talked about that, and it got. I ended up with 250,000 readers a month for a weekly blog from an Archdruid talking about politics from the bizarrest sense. 250,000 people a month were reading this because nobody else was saying what was actually responding to people's lived experience. Sorry, that was my rant.
I'm trying not to do again. I'm trying not to do the Alex Jones thing and cry on air.
Gotcha.
It's we in Canada have poor areas, and I have to say one of the first examples of the disparity between between the lower class and here in Canada as well as in the States, we have this one area of town in Ottawa called Vanier, and there are many jokes made about Vanier because it's essentially the poor the poor working class. It's quote unquote the ghetto. It's where all the drug dealers are. There's a strip club in the middle of a residential area as a joke. It's pretty bad. You don't go there at night type of thing, but it's nowhere close to as bad as some places in the States where if you step outside your door, within 5 minutes you will get robbed, shot, beaten up, whatever. We drove,
unless you're a local,
or unless you're a local,
in which case they know you.
Exactly. I drove through. I went with my second year college class for advertising. We went we went to go visit a bunch of New York advertising agencies, and I love New York City. It's like my home away from home. I got brothers out there. for all the Freemasons on, that's, for anywhere in New York, whether you're talking Brooklyn, thank you for listening to the show. Love you to death. Couldn't have got here without you. But going through Syracuse, New York, going even on the highway, you could see the neighborhoods and whether it was considered middle class or lower class. For here, all of the houses built in the early 80s, it's siding. I live in a house that was built in 1982. It's a condo. We bought it for a very good price compared to most others in Ottawa at this point. 3-bedroom, good size. But it's like an 80s style. It's still in fairly good condition. Whereas the houses were, it's like it was when you watch a disaster movie or like a monster movie where it's like, okay, they're going back to this part of the neighborhood. Nobody's been there for like years and it's dingy and this and that.
And that's what you see.
That's what it looked like. And this was in 2012.
I know.
And I'm sitting there going, holy fuck. This is, my God.
Yeah. One of the advantages I have, I take the train. That's my preferred mode of transportation. Okay? And so the train always goes through the poor areas. So I've got a rail side view of the American decay and decline, and it's a view that most people in the bubble, the bicoastal elite bubble, never see. They literally the United States outside of the big cities on the two coasts. It's a third world country at this point. Seriously, it is a third world country that happens to have a first world military and a lot of a string of very rich cities going down the two coasts. I'm at a loss for words, and for a writer, that's a very rare thing. This is the situation that we've got, and that was not the case 40 years ago. 40 years ago, the town in which I now live, this dirt poor, run-down, dilapidated, jobless basket case of an Appalachian town, was a successful, thriving small city with plenty of jobs for everyone. It was a viable community in those days, and that didn't happen because of some force. The end of that didn't happen because of some force of nature. It happened because of deliberate policies pursued by both political parties. And both political parties are now reaping the whirlwind. I mean, the Republicans were just as horrified when Donald Trump took the nomination. You remember all the sort of indistinguishable Republican candidates who were trying to, Jeb Bush and all these people, who were basically all competing. But the thing is, a lot of people, most Americans wouldn't, because Jeb Bush was just more of the same.
Yeah.
He was saying, we're going to make a few little cosmetic changes and we're going to do exactly what Obama did, which is exactly what his brother did, which is ... And the Republicans were horrified because Donald Trump comes in and says, no, let's actually enforce our immigration laws and stop encouraging the offshoring of jobs. And it didn't matter what else he said. It didn't matter what he was. People could make all kinds of jokes about him. But nobody else was willing to talk about the things that matter to half the American people. And that's what's bringing us up against the kind of crisis that we're facing in this country, in third world America.
Well, I even for myself, I looked at and I watched all the debates. We here in Canada look down at American politics. It's with the reason that we watch NFL and some of us will watch CFL. I have a family member who was star quarterback in several great Grey Cups. And no one will know anything about that south of the border. It's a Grey Cup. What the fuck is that? It's a Super Bowl trophy that is way older than any trophy in North America. It's the original football trophy.
Sweet.
But it's that's great. You can know all the Canadian politics, and I know a ton about Canadian politics in terms of the strategies and the motivations, but everyone watches American politics because it's the NFL of politics. You want the big show, you got to go to the big market. You watch the big market. And I watched it, I watched it extensively. The Democratic nomination was everyone knew it was going to be Bernie or Hillary, and everyone knew that Hillary was going to win because, it's either, we all know how it's supposed to work. And for them, it worked out the way that it was supposed to. With Donald Trump, he came in, and I know I'm going to steal a lot from Michael Moore, and he spent a lot of time researching this, and I didn't actually even watch the movie. But yeah, you got all these people who were kicked down, believe it or not, by Democratic policies, but but believe it or not, also by a lot of Republican policies and a lot.
It was totally bipartisan.
Yeah, 100%.
The policies that destroyed the American working class were absolutely a bipartisan consensus.
Yes, and it is
both
again,
parties.
And it comes down to again they'll put a show on in front, and they will work out a deal in the back room, and they will screw the average voter out so they can get reelected, and they're going to tell them, oh, it was the other guy who did it, not me, and shift the blame. So when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, Trump's winning, and I know Trump is, and I've read enough about him. I know enough about Trump from people who have worked with him, worked for him, written books for him, and have given exposés, and it's like, okay, you could be bullshitting, but there's always a kernel of truth in everything that is always said. And I know enough about, from what I've heard, to know he's like, he's never had to work for anything in his life, and he's constantly been looked down upon, and that's the worst thing. He's been looked down upon by the elite of the elite, so Democrats. So like Democratic rich on Wall Street, or Republican rich on Wall Street. But the inner Wall Street have said, you're not good enough. And coming from somebody who has, in any crowd that I've ever been in, always been kind of the odd man out. And it's, it's kind of like, you want to root for that guy. Whereas, like, okay, you understand that. Like, okay, he's got some good ideas. He said some things a certain way that made sense from a certain business standpoint. It's like if Elon Musk said, okay, well, we got to go to Mars. And it's like we elect Elon Musk to go to Mars. Then we find out, oh, fuck, like, he treats his workers like shit, which from anybody, if you, Google Elon Musk, how he treats workers, people just go like, oh my God, this is horrible that he doesn't pay overtime, da-da-da-da-da. There's tons of people out there talking badly about it. So when they looked at what is just saying, and nobody wanted to be able to do the research into it, and he was saying he was trying to say, the subject matter from what he was trying to present was right. He didn't exactly express it in anything more than, let's say, a grade 10 level, to a certain extent, in a very large suit. If that, yeah. If bigly is used as a word, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're a multi-billionaire and you don't know how to use a word? Like, I've got a larger vocabulary than I do, and I only have a college degree. Thank you. And it, like, for me, it's like, okay, it's either he used that language to try and appeal to the common man, or he's actually that dumb. It's a possibility. So I looked at this entire situation going, okay, this is happening. And I'm thinking, I'm like getting into it, all my friends, and I have a lot of friends on Facebook who are going to listen to this and probably shit on me, but I already told them, like, I love you no matter what. It doesn't matter what political affiliation you are. I love you because you're a good person. Like, I don't give a fuck about your politics. The politicians are what I don't like. I love you because you're awesome. The same reason that I love everyone who listens to this show, because they're fucking awesome. It doesn't matter about politics. We talk politics, but as an individual, I love them. So when they said, okay, we like Trump, I'm like, I'm not going to say anything about this on I'll leave it to the show, or leave it to my own friends or what have you. But when he went on, I'm like, he's going to win because he's talking about the proper issues. He's making some sense, and he's talking at a level that they will be able, like, your average person who has been shit on by the political elite, will respond to. And as an advertising guy, and if I went into, to be blunt, if I went into advertising for politics or messaging for politics, it doesn't matter. I would, like, Trudeau's win. Jesus Christ! Like, I could have gotten a shit on a stick elected over Trudeau. That's the level that I understand the entire process as far as the mind works. But I'm looking at this like, he's going to win, and I know exactly it's going to, and everyone didn't believe it. And then this entire thing happened. I'm like, okay, now watch this. He is going to do everything exactly. He's going to do what the worst parts about what he said he's going to do, which is going to piss everyone else off, and the things that he wanted, that people wanted in the conspiracy community who believed him, and the hail kick. We can go into that, but yeah, that entire side of 4chan, which is like, okay, we're going to invoke Keck and get Donald Trump elected, and they're people who believe, and again, not knocking 4chan, like 4chan at all, but there is an entire segment of society in America that believes in anything that they're told, and the worst of the worst, not just cynical, but not, like, if we as Freemasons help society, that we're devil worshippers. So they think that they know how the game of billionaires is played. They think that they figured it out. And I'm like, you make $40,000 a year, 30, like, you're poor as shit, and you think you have the frame of mind of how billionaire person works. Like, I don't think you do, and I don't think how badly you're getting played. And it's as much as I'd like to be able to say there's a very good chance you were fooled based on your fact that you question everything so that you're made to believe the exact opposite of what is actually true in the situation. Your ability to look at the conspiracy and question everything has made you believe the lie. And because of that...
Excessive, the conspiratorial mind is a form of gullibility. It's just a gullibility to the opposite of what the conventional wisdom is. And so, you can sell anything as long as you convince them that somebody else is saying the opposite. Somebody with an authority is saying the opposite.
And it's like the people who needed the help and just voted for anything other than the status quo because it wouldn't change, got fooled because this was their desperation attempt. And they voted for it, and they got fucked over. The people who thought they knew the game, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna put all of our money on red, and we're gonna get double the money back, and we're gonna say fuck you to those people who don't know shit, the sheeple out there, and they're gonna be screwed, and he's gonna get all the Pizzagate people, and he's gonna drain the swamp, and America's gonna be great again. I'm like, well, America was great beforehand. You guys have a constitution that is a constitution that's been used the longest straight from beginning to now, compared to any other country out there. Your rights and freedoms.
It would be nice. It would be nice if we still followed it. But
I know. But the essential part
it's a really good constitution.
It's a very good constitution.
It is at least still theoretically in place.
It's theoretically in place, but the Constitution has been theoretically in place for the longest period of time as any a country on the planet right now. Every single other country, their Constitution or Bill of Rights or what have you, has not been around as long as America's, and many of theirs.
I'm trying to think. I can think of one other that actually has had, in effect, its constitution in place a little longer, and that would be Great Britain.
The Magna Carta, but it was more of a concept.
I'm thinking specifically the laws that the whatever you call. I've forgotten the name of the act. Our English listeners will doubtless know it. In 1688. In 1688, when William III became king, James II was kicked out, William III came in, there was a specific series of legal acts by Parliament which basically have shaped the relationship between the king and Parliament ever since. And so I believe the 1688, in effect, England has an unwritten constitution, but those laws basically function as the anchor for it. And I think that if you talk to constitutional law people, they'll say that Great Britain is the one country in the world because theirs goes to 1688 and ours goes to 1782.
Well,
so they have a little ahead of us, but that's it. That's it.
Let's see if I get this down here. So the Bill of Rights is 1689. It's listed. And this was an act of Parliament.
1689.
Deals with constitutional matters set out in certain basic civil rights passed. And 16th of December.
That's the one.
1689. It is a restatement of statutory form Declaration of Rights. So theoretically, yes. You're right on that.
But still, that's one of two. And both countries have their problems, but both of them have had essentially stable governmental systems for all these years, and most of the democracies on the planet copy one or the other.
Essentially. So
yeah.
And I'm trying to think where I was going with that. But essentially, it's
I don't know. Well, you were talking about how people were wanting America to make America great again.
Well, the spirit of America is it has been a shining beacon in the Western world and all the world for a very long time, and it's for a reason. It's like, yes, Americans they're supposed to walk they're supposed to walk taller. Their balls are supposed to be bigger. Their hats are supposed to be more ostentatious. Their cars are supposed to be louder, and they're supposed to be the smartest, fastest, strongest, and most amazing. They give the most, and they take no shit. They put they're the good guys. The good guys win, and the bad guys lose. That is the essential. That's the essential theme. And
that's essential mythology, and it has happened. So there you are.
So the idea that things have changed, and understanding that technology has changed, the way the world works has changed. And our enemies are the people who have been against us for a very long time. They could be evil people. They have long memories, and if you have ultimate power, and you have the means to do and say or manifest anything you want because you have ultimate power within your sphere of influence, If you got a grudge, you're gonna take that out on people. At the start of the show, I called out a shit ton of people. I may have been punching above my weight. My weight may actually have some words of people who are above them. So my whole thing is and I don't know for sure, and this is the way I've been able to save my ass so far. I'm saying if you've got essentially what's supposed to be a democracy, and I'm saying even a worse form of fake democracy than what people claim the Western world is, as far as left, right, doesn't matter. It's all corporations. For them, it's oligarchs. It's rich billionaires who are friends with the president, who has been the president for the last 10 years, and he's the richest person on the planet, which has happened because he's essentially gamed the entire market, killed any opposition, killed anybody who's reported anything bad about him, and the reason he has the skills and knowledge and calculatability to be able to do this, well, first of all, I don't think he has any emotions beyond, anything he shows, but he's also a KGB trained operative, so he knows the game, and he knows it very, very, very well. And if you think that somebody, and even though the America's bad, and yes, I know Noam Chomsky will say, like, well, America is, like, we rig elections and we overthrow people and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, yeah, but has the president ever said, go kill this protester or this politician or this person who's writing bad things about me or the civil rights organizer? You got people who are disappearing and dropping left, right, and center in Russia, and they have been for the last couple of years. Like, sure, people say that about UFOs. Like, we pepper spray people. We corral them. We don't outright shoot them in the head and throw them out of a 15-story window to the rocks below. So, if you got that, is it a possibility? If they have the same technological capabilities that we do you think they hacked both parties and released, like, if especially Hillary? I don't like Hillary. Republicans hate Hillary. When it comes to Russia, they absolutely hate Hillary, because she screwed them over hardcore and lost him a lot of money. So I can guarantee you, if I were him, and if I'm thinking in Putin's shoes, that, and being being the type of person who would be spiteful and be able to tell somebody off on air, I could see somebody who has ultimate power saying, yeah, I'm going to use everything at my disposal and every single resource that I have to be able to hurt this person and be able to hurt hurt their friends and hurt everything they're about and destroy them as a people, because fuck you, that's why. And if you've got the power to do it, you'll be able to do it. If you've ever let the air out of somebody's tires, if you've ever spilled somebody's drink, if you've ever just looked at somebody bad, if you've ever closed the door on somebody on the bus because you didn't like them or they pissed you off or they scratched your car, you basically did the exact same thing. Now scale that up like 100 trillion times. That's the game you're dealing with. So you think it's not possible? Oh, hell yeah, it's possible. The only difference is the people that didn't... Go for it.
No, it's possible, but there's also the simple fact that, again, as I noted, it's not as though we have to look far. It's not as though Hillary Clinton has to look far to find the person who was most responsible for her defeat. She needs a mirror. And whatever else was going on, again, she made the same mistakes in 2016 that she made in 2008. She still hasn't learned from them.
No, because she sucks.
I don't, and as I've noted, I don't think any of us will ever know what actually happened, because it's going to dissolve into a chorus of competing accusations. And the actual fact of the, I mean, there was something on The Onion, which is a online humor magazine, where the FBI had revealed that they found out that Al Qaeda had come up with a sinister new plan to sit back and watch America destroy itself. They're ordering lots of popcorn and things like that. I tend to think that if Vladimir Putin has a serious grudge against the United States, which he may well, okay, he's probably laying in the popcorn. Because, I mean, especially during this last election, watching the U.S. display its most embarrassing sides to everybody, and knowing that whoever was going to win was going to end up with a bitterly divided country, a bitterly divided Congress, a society where constructive change is almost impossible at this point, because every issue becomes caught up in these crazed partisan hatreds. And if you know your way around the history of how countries fall apart, you look out the door. It's one of those things. Look out the window in the United States. It's a messy situation, and whatever the Russians may be doing, whatever the Chinese may be doing, if I were looking for somebody to mess with the United States, I would expect it to be China, because the Chinese also hold grudges. They hold historical grudges, and the United States has some things on its record when it comes to China.
At the same
time, dating back to the Boxer Rebellion and beforehand. And the thing is, in China, ever since the revolution, there's been a lot of fixation, which of course is very heavily encouraged by government propaganda, on what they call the Century of Dishonor, the period from 1849 to 1949. The Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, all of the situations where Western countries basically carved China up into spheres of influence. Not only have they not forgotten it, they've turned it into a big deal. And so, yeah, I would watch. And, the thing is, the United States has made a lot of enemies. And those enemies cannot be expected to sit back on their hands and just do nothing. So, there will be stuff going on. But again, there's also going to be a lot of popcorn being popped. Because the United States is doing a fine job of driving itself toward destruction, which is very unfortunate. And it's going to be extremely unfortunate for those of us who live here, and probably very challenging for those who live too close, such as you. But we'll see where it goes. Okay.
My main thing.
Now we are. Yeah, go ahead.
We're coming to the close here, but there was one prediction that I made, and I think I may have made it beforehand, but my prediction was, okay, people are freaking out about this one thing, and I said, okay, Trump's going to get impeached. In 2019, you'll have a civil war. It will start in 2019. I could be wrong. I just have a feeling, based on the current fervor in the media and from what I'm seeing on the street, like you and I are talking about this stuff, and it concerns us. You're American. You deal with this stuff every day. I'm a Canadian. It affects me on an economic level and somewhat of a political level, but I'm not directly in the States, and it affects me from a psychological level. So you imagine somebody who's a completely ardent Trump supporter who thinks the deep state's out to get them and all this and that. Well, of course, you're going to freak out a little bit. Same thing with the Democrats. When you start getting attacked, it's like, oh shit, I guess those gun rights probably would have helped you out, huh? So there might be some shit that goes down, and it might be whether, and I think that it is going to be orchestrated. And if Trump is still in power, if he does get impeached, the Civil War will be based around the fact that he will stay in power and basically say, like, you're going to impeach me or try to remove me? Yeah, well, fuck you. I'm staying in here. I'm calling in the RV. Like, Army, here's martial law. Deal with it. It's a possibility if the timing is right.
Yeah, I'm going to make a competing prediction.
Go for it.
I'm going to make a competing prediction. I'm going to predict that what's going to happen is that the media uproar and all the yelling is entirely confined to the chattering classes, the middle and upper middle classes, the people who think their opinions matter more. The vast majority of Americans, certainly enough of a majority, not the vast majority, but a significant majority of Americans are going to continue to support Trump. And in the 2018 elections, the Republicans are going to hold their own. And in 2020, Trump's going to be reelected by a significant majority. And it is going to be a total, and the entire left and the center and the mainstream Republicans, the whole political establishment in 2020, November 2020, is going to melt down to an extent that has not been seen since FDR won re-election in 1936, also in the teeth of opposition from the entire political class. I can't think of any other way in which I would compare FDR and Donald Trump, but I think what's going on is a lot of what's going on in the media and so on. It exists in an echo chamber. It exists in an echo chamber of people who think that their opinions matter, and they just as everyone. I mean, you realize that no American newspaper endorsed Donald Trump. All of them endorsed either Hillary or refused to make an endorsement. Actually, I think there was one that endorsed the Libertarian candidate. None of them endorsed Donald Trump, and yet he won. Okay? In the same way, basically, there's an echo chamber effect going on where all the people who think their opinions matter are united in their denunciation of Donald Trump. They're going to criticize this. They're going to criticize that. And the rest of the country doesn't care. And so I think this is my prediction. And of course, I may be wrong, just as I could have been, when I made my prediction in January of 2016 about Trump's election. I stated that. I could be wrong here. I may be wrong, but my working guess at this point is that the Republicans are going to basically, in 2018, they're going to hold on to their current majorities in Congress. And in 2020, Trump will win re-election by a significant margin. I don't think it'll be a landslide, but I think it'll be a significant margin. And then things are going to we're going to see a world-class screeching meltdown. And that could be entertaining.
Okay, so at least, and you're going on record here as stating that Trump.
I know.
is going to win.
I'm going on the record. I'm going on the record here. That's my prediction at this point. Things could change, but as we're now going, that's what I think is going to happen.
I'm enough of a cynic to be able to say it's like, yeah, I can see that shit happening, and I'll laugh.
Yeah.
It'll suck. And some comedians, the person who will benefit the most from this, apparently so far, will be Coelbern, because his ratings have gone so far up, and I don't care.
Generally speaking, Donald Trump has been an absolute godsend to comedians and to the media. Because every time he opens his mouth, he says something that deserves a news story.
Exactly, because as I said, he's an idiot, of course.
Yeah, but the thing is, there have been times. I mean, like the whole Bigley business. I honestly thought at several points during the campaign that he was deliberately saying things to try to whip up the mainstream media into a cluckfest. Because that would the thing is, the mass media in the United States these days, in terms of the general population, considers the mass media to be morally several notches below street prostitutes and drug dealers. Mm-hmm. Nobody trusts them, and for very good reason. When I was when I was in high school, I actually took the Russian language. We actually had in Seattle, which is where I grew up. We had Russian classes in the high school that I went to, and so I studied Russian. Every so often, we would get in the third year, we would get copies of Pravda. Cool. Okay, and this is during the Soviet Union's kind of stuff. We get these copies of Pravda. We go through the Pravda and we read these stories, and they were absurd. A glorious People's Republic of Afghanistan win. These completely ridiculous political propaganda masquerading as news. Okay. If I go out and pick up the Washington Post right now, I see identical stories, just as slanted, just as absurd, just as disconnected from people's lives. I mean, I'm not the only one who's saying this. These days, the WAPO is being called Pravda on the Potomac by a significant number of people, and for good reason.
And I've heard the same thing about Breitbart. I've heard the same thing about Fox News.
Exactly. And the thing is, that's the thing. All of our news media, not just the left stuff, the left, the right, the center, the whole 9 yards, it's all become this sort of brain-dead absurdist propaganda. And so most people no longer take their opinions from the media. If anything, they look at what the media is saying and then believe something else. And so again, all of this media screeching about Donald Trump may actually strengthen him, because people instinctively distrust the media. That's why they know they're being lied to. They're being lied to by the Breitbart and Fox News. They're being lied to by the WAPO and the New York Times. They're being lied to by the entire industry. Because, the American news media is there to sell soap. It's not there to communicate facts.
I know. I've read the book. It was part of our advertising, advertising 101 essentially in first year of college was the history of advertising, and a lot of it was how do you sell this soap? Like Palmolive, it's palm and olive. Okay, well you call it Palmolive, and you went to your hands feel beautiful afterwards. They didn't focus on the fact that it made the dishes look good. No,
they created some kind of imaginary linkage between the product and a desire, and hammered on that, even in the most absurd ways. It's magic. Yoan Coleano, who was a brilliant Romanian student of scholar of magical writings, who long complex story there. He wrote a book called Eros and Magic in the Renaissance. And one of the things he argued in this book is that modern advertising is a debased form of magic.
Must be why I'm so good at it then.
Well, there we go. Yeah, you see, because advertising is basically targeting people's irrational desires, linking products or services or whatever you're trying to advertise to that desire in a non-rational linkage, so that people end up with this bizarre notion that they can achieve happiness by guzzling fizzy brown sugar water or something.
Well, even then, it's people will run away from fear more than they will go towards pleasure, unless it is a fantasy, which then they will run towards pleasure and away from fear.
Exactly.
Advertising luxury products, take every single marketing and advertising principle you will ever learn, toss it right out the window. Completely different ballgame. Because it's
and so, but it's all it's a manipulative form of magic. It's a form of magic that is not. I was talking earlier about changing yourself rather than changing the world. Advertising is designed to make people not change themselves. It's designed to make people want something outside themselves rather than paying attention to the sources of their power and their happiness within themselves. And so to a certain extent, it's evil magic.
Now I understand why people hate advertising so much. I'm like,
and deservedly, it's manipulative. It's an attempt to control them.
Well, you're changing behavior, and
exactly.
When I was in college, I actually wrote when I founded my first agency, and I did it in second semester, first year, and I said, okay, well, I didn't like anything that was going on. I looked at all the advertisers that were out there, and I was like, I can do better than you, because especially in my city, I love Ottawa to death. And I'm sorry, I'll sit I'm making good money working for myself as a single man operation, and most of the advertising agencies here in Ottawa, if I walk in there and it's like you won't hire me. Why? Because I don't fit into your crowd, but you're producing shit. I could do this hungover the next day.
You just explained why they're not hiring you.
Well, there you go.
Because you would compete with them.
So I wrote I wrote a Bill of Rights. I wrote a Hippocratic oath for advertising that essentially would if you're going to use advertising, use it for the positive benefits, and here's a positive system to be able to use it, where it's you go towards, for instance, the idea of scantily clad women to sell beer, or what we have here, Canadian Tire, which is the Canadian or the American. What? I don't think you have an American equivalent.
But
Walmart.
A big tire company.
It's like Walmart here in Canada and more of a Canadian theme. They have this entire campaign for a number of years. They stopped doing it now, thank God. Where essentially and it went with the whole everybody loves Raymond trend, where the husband and the man was a complete fucking idiot, couldn't do anything goddamn right, and the wife was always right. And it's not only was she right, she's would make fun of him because he is wrong for making that choice, and obviously she knows right, and anything you do, and that was that essential thing. So it's okay, don't stop with all this gender division bullshit. Go towards the product. Look at the product. What is the benefit that makes your life better? Focus on the positives and how it will make your life better. That's it. Don't deal with any of the negatives.
Yes, and that's very ethical and very sweet. And the problem is, of course, that at this point most new products don't make your life better. Most new products actually do progress. No longer means improvement. A new product typically will do a worse job of what it replaces. It will cost you more, have more side effects, have more externalized costs that are burdening. It's just so that's the problem with industrialism in extremis. And there's a whole other conversation which we could have now if we had time.
Well, I would agree with that. Except for I went from a BlackBerry Priv to an iPhone 7 Plus, and I could tell you it's a lot better.
You've got one. Yeah, you see, everyone goes to the one example of one of the few technologies that has actually improved during that time. Okay, think of what's happened to product quality in food, for example.
Oh yeah.
In many here I don't know. In many you're up in Canada here. Every year that passes, the packages get just a bit smaller, the quality gets just a bit lower. When something is advertised new and improved, it may be new, but it's not improved. Look at our automobiles, which fall apart. Generally, consumer goods at this point are pieces of crap compared to what they were even 10 years ago.
Yep.
And with the sole exception of the handful of consumer products where actual technical innovation is still taking place, computers being, or things like smartphones being among them. Okay. But it's because progress is such a mythology among us, because it is a religion to believe that technological progress will save us. Everyone makes a beeline for those handful of examples and uses that to ignore what's happening in the rest of the life. That also is evil magic.
Holy shit.
That's the spell you're under. The spell that makes you look at the few things that would justify the claim and away from all the many things that would contradict it.
I'm having a kind of a revelation moment, which is the whole part of this show. Wow. That being said, I know it's midnight.
I do what I can.
Oh, I love having you on the show, brother.
Well,
my goodness.
Hey, thank you. We can schedule another time. I have more books coming out.
I know you've got October coming out. A couple. If you check out Amazon, some fantastic tomes I need to get my hands on.
Let me see what I can get you.
It would much appreciated.
I can sample copy. Yeah, I can shake loose the occasional review copy.
But still, one of the most, even though it was very controversial, one of the most stimulating conversations I've had with a guest on here in quite some time, and of course it's going to be from a fellow Freemason, a fellow brother, a fellow seeker of truth, and one of the most genuinely nice people that I actually have the pleasure of ever talking to. The fact you come on the show, considering how much I swear, it is part of the act to a certain extent. Creative people, we swear a lot. I'm Canadian. I drink a lot of scotch. That's what we do. But still, it's a lot of fun. And this is the whole idea of Throwback Month.
Yeah, I have enjoyed this evening immensely.
It's much appreciated. Thank you. Now, I know that Denver Michaels, we have a sandwich contest that we're actually supposed to be announcing the winners of, and about now. So, just to give you a brief overview, the last time you were on was January sometime, I believe.
I think it was like that, yeah.
Okay, so around that time, we actually announced what was called the Send Denver Michaels a Sandwich Contest. Now, you mentioned West Virginia and Virginia. Now, Denver Michaels is a contributor to the show. He does our cryptozoology report.
Sweet.
He's an amazing man. My mom loves him just because of his southern drawl is like velvet. Oh, my goodness. Amazing man, a good person, great writer, and a very skeptical cryptozoologist. So he goes out in the field a lot. I'm like, okay, you know what, Denver? You're new to the field. You write some good books. I like the cut of your jib. We're going to support you, and we're going to get your name out there, and we're going to make sure that people know who you are because I believe that you are that awesome. So I said, we're going to make sure you are well-fed while out in the field. We're going to run a sandwich contest. So people have been sending in their sandwich recipes for the last 6 months. 6 months.
Sweet.
Good, bad, doesn't matter. And he's been trying out every single one and posting it on his Twitter account.
That's great.
And the winner of the show gets 3 of his signed books, like hard copies, and they're all about cryptids. So South American, North American, West Virginian. He's got like Mothman, Ogopogo, you name it.
Yeah.
It's got it. Riveting stuff. Has gone to the Amazon, has searched for the giant anacondas.
I'm going to have to read this guy. I was a major fan of cryptozoology when I was in my teen years. I haven't followed it anything like it enough in recent years, so I will definitely hunt up his books and read them.
I'll connect you with him and get you guys together because he's a good man and he comes from a very skeptical view, and he loves ancient history. And we're at one point we'll talk about giants on the show, and it's a big thing for him. So,
Sweet.
That's the whole thing. That's the next segment. I know I've kept you up a lot longer than I said that I was going to, but honestly,
It's been known to happen.
Well, you get Freemasons together and some scotch, and you talk about magic and esotericism, and 2 days goes by, and you're like, well, when did Lodge tile? Oh boy, what happened to the time? How long were those minutes, Secretary? And what about the correspondence? Everyone's just like, oh. Here we go. Grand Lodge says this. Oh, my God. Okay, so we can't drink anymore while Lodge is actually happening. We know that. Thank you. Good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, with what will probably go down as one of the wildest, and I'm probably going to get some hate mail from this one and some love mail, and then some hate mail and some love mail. Either way, it was a pleasure. just a fabulously wonderful conversationist. And
well, thank you very much. I as I mentioned, I enjoyed it a great deal. Marvelous way to spend an evening.
As long as you're entertained, we're entertained. The people are entertained. And again, you stepped in 2 days on 2 days' notice, and you came to bat.
I had the evening free.
Oh my goodness! Well, that's appreciated. So again, sleep well, and
thank you. I will do
that. So I'm just before you go.
We will talk soon.
Perfect. I'm just going to get Denver's music on here before. I'm just making sure I'm not going to play the birthday music. There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's John Michael Greer. Again, you can check his books out, as well as the Druid Report. The links are in the show notes. So, again, have yourself a wonderful evening. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me say this much. This contest, we started this out, to be frank, I'm like, what is the most ridiculous thing I can possibly do? And I'm going to say this much. The winner of this contest is actually going to win a guest host slot with our Laird Scranton episode in 2 weeks. That is a bonus I'm throwing in there to give a little icing on the sugar, but that's on the chocolate, that's on the caramel, because we're going to be talking a lot of ancient history, esoteric stuff on that show. The last show we had with Laird Scranton, we actually had to cut out a lot of content because it was going into his other books, and that was when I think I first conceived this contest idea. And I said, Denver, we're going to get this thing going, and we didn't really have a framework for the first couple of weeks. Saying goodbye to some people in chat. Now, I'm going to get Denver on here, and we're going to say hello. So let me just see if I can get him on video here. Denver Michaels. So yeah, we've been throwing this out here for every single week. We've been having reports on a weekly basis as best as we can when he's available. And I know that we've had one discovery, which is if you make a sandwich with peanut butter, Denver's not going to like it. Now, I know he has the winner in hand. I do not know what the winner is. I do not. And I'm just trying to figure out where Denver is. Is Denver still alive? Oh, he is! Oh my goodness, he answered the call. Thank you. Denver.
Hello?
Hello, Denver Michaels. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, man?
I'm doing quite good. I'm gonna see if I can get your picture on here.
There we go.
Let's see, cancel. That's image one. Can I transform this? Can I turn this into... Alright, this is gonna get really weird for a second just because I have to actually put your image up here. Screen capture. Display capture, there we go. Skype that screen. Alright, there we go. You are large and on screen. I'm just going to shrink your image down for everybody at home. And I'm going to welcome Mr. Denver Michaels onto the program. Ladies and gentlemen, the man himself. Now, I have to say, how have you thought about this contest? When I first came to you with this idea, what did you think?
I thought it was so stupid it might just work,
And
I mean, it's great.
Now, I appreciate the fact that you went along with this based on purely based on your amusement. Just like let's see what shit happens here. This is how we do this entire show. And I know I'm like flushed and sweating here. For people who think that I've been having a little bit too much scotch, I've actually had less than I usually do. It's summertime here in Ottawa. It's very humid. And I've got a fan that's like on 5. And it's not doing shit. Now, how many winners do we have? And I know that you said that there was multiple. I asked you not to tell me. So, do we have a first place winner?
We've got a first place winner.
Okay, now...
We've got our second place and our worst established.
Okay, now, I'm going to say this much, is that I've heard you complain. I mean... cheer for the recipes that have come in.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, we even had one recipe that was disqualified based on its, I think they sent in 2. There was one that was fairly bad, and there was also one that did not have the right ingredients around, so you're like, well, I'm just going to disqualify this, but here is, here's a consolation prize. But I know that we do have an absolute worst that is not, without trying to kill you, a sandwich that was so bad, you gave it one of the lowest ratings I've ever seen from a sandwich, the lowest rating of this contest. Now, if you can describe the recipe for me, please. How did it make you feel?
This sandwich made me feel just bad inside. This was a toasted sandwich with warm tuna and peas. Ooh. And it was sent in by Ellen, and it was the worst. And she sent it in quite a while back, and it held on to that bottom spot throughout the whole contest. So she's going to get a book.
So here's the interesting part about Ellen. And Ellen, congratulations. Your sandwich sucked badly, absolutely horrible.
It was awful.
Denver hated it and gave it a 2 out of 10. Now,
I hated it, but in a good way, It was like so bad, it was awesome.
and I know that there was a point in this show where you're like, the worst sandwich I'm going to give a book to, and then you instantaneously realized, oh no, what have I done? And it, honestly, like a cavalcade of ridiculous recipes came in that I didn't even send you because it's like, no, this is going to kill him. No, it's done. Now Ellen is actually one of our. Oh my god, I didn't even thank the patrons on the show this episode. My goodness. Now it also I know that I was supposed to give some love to Rocky Stucci, who's our guest next week. He's got the Rocky Stucci show, a lot more political, a lot more less ranty than I am. I said to give him some love. Brother, can't wait for next week. Love you to death. You're amazing. Keep the Italian home fires burning out there. And again, if John Ward gives you any guff, you know what to do. Now, Ellen is one of our masters for a patron. She essentially it's our highest echelon of donation per month. We're a strictly donation show. Now, she has been our largest supporter in terms of merchandise, in terms of supporting the show and making sure we can pay the bills, so that my wife doesn't ask me to shut this down because the kid's on the way and we got to pay the bills. So, Ellen, the fact that you sent in the shittiest sandwich imaginable and won yourself a book out of it. You know what, as my sister would say, the shittiness of your sandwich is inversely proportioned to the size of your heart, and one of the kindest, most gentlest, amazing people I know, and supportive. And the fact that she directly contributes to this show, literally I couldn't do the show without her. Ellen, thank you very much. Your sandwich sucks. Here's a free book. Okay, so that is the worst sandwich out there. Now, we've got a grand prize winner. I don't want to know the grand prize winner yet. Do we have a tie for second place?
We had a tie. Kevin Stevens and Jared were tied.
Holy shit.
Their sandwiches, but we had some movement on the leaderboard last week, and Marc Catalano snuck in with his turkey, pesto, salt, and pepper sandwich.
Oh my god.
He snuck into second place last week.
Marc just actually logged off about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, what the hell?
And he, again, it's... Well, that was a pesto sandwich. I know you're like, dude, if he takes this out, and I'm going to say this outright, if he had removed an ingredient, he would have won. Is that correct?
No, that is Rob Jeffries' sandwich.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so, see, let me go over that sandwich real quick. I know everybody's been up late, but Rob Jeffries sent in a white bread, grilled bacon and Swiss with peanut butter. So... Now, I scored that at a 5.5. If it didn't have the peanut butter, this would have been the number 2 sandwich.
Okay, so this is where I figured out that you just don't like peanut butter very much. Or at least not peanut butter with...
Peanut butter's fine with jam, not with a grilled cheese. You know what I'm saying? Peanut butter does not go with everything, folks.
True enough.
Not for me, anyway.
the favorite, and my wife does make me the occasional sandwich, and I love her to death, and she's the best person in my life. And you know a person when they make a great sandwich, it's not peanut butter. I know she makes one great with peanut butter. She took the peanut butter out, but grilled cheese and bacon sandwich, and not just any grilled cheese, Cracker Barrel, chive, white cheddar.
Yeah, that's strong.
Oh my goodness, it's like I don't care anything that's going on in the world. She'll drop it in front of me, and like it's whole wheat bread, and it's just you pull it apart, and it's so gooey, and you see the bacon, and you're like, I know I could have like 3 of these, but she only makes one, and it makes it special because it's like, here is the rarest sandwich that you love the most on the planet. So, yeah, now I'm hungry. I gotta go get some food after this.
It sounds good.
So those two, okay, so they won once. Was it signed book or it's a signed book? From
Okay, so Marc Catalano will get 2 signed books of his choice.
Okay, Marc.
And let me back up 1 second. Rob Jeffries, I mean, the sandwich, like I said, it would have got in the 2 spot. So I want to give him a consolation prize. I've got no way, I don't know how to get up with him, but I've got a, if he wants it, I've got a Kindle gift code that he can redeem for one of my Kindle books, or if he doesn't want one of my books, he can redeem it for, I think it's like $2.99, Amazon gift card or whatever. So I want to give him a consolation prize.
Okay, so again, we're going to try and track these people down, and as I said, like if you don't, if somebody doesn't claim their prize, I'm just going to give it to the next person up.
Yeah.
So like, we have enough social media coverage, and I think that our fans and I think the denizens are rabid enough that if they're willing to put up with my voice and my constant swearing and scotch drinking for a 3 to 4 hour period, they're probably going to check in at some time to see how things are. So I know somebody's going to get some information somewhere. I'll check the comments. We'll get to them at some point. Now,
yeah, and I got 2 other consolation prizes. The same thing. I was going to give to Kevin Stevens and Jared because they had been in the 2 spot tied for so long, and I've got their information. I can get that out to them.
Well, Jared's back he's back from a trip around South America. I'm trying to get him on the show because he's been everywhere. Like everywhere, any megalithic site. He went to Easter Island, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I'm so jealous.
Oh, I know. It's like I wish I could do that. Like for me, it'd be like a digital nomad. I like just graphic design and write blogs from anywhere. I don't know what he does, but he's able to do it. And
he must be independently wealthy. I don't know, but that's awesome that he was able to do that.
He's also a genuinely good man. So if he's not independently wealthy, he's independently wealthy in spirit, and now he's independently wealthy in Denver Michael's books. So. That beats out the first 2 in my opinion. If the United States goes to shit, and you guys go into civil war, I will use Denver Michael's books over cigarettes and toilet paper to barter for goods. It's like, okay, sure, I know you can wipe your ass with this, but still, this right here will give you like ancient knowledge on South American cryptozoology, or like even Canadian. Like who knows? Some water monster could come out and like kill you. This could be useful, Yeah,
we could eat water monsters.
Exactly.
If it really hits the fan.
So that is my opinion on this. Okay, so we have a grand prize winner, which what the grand prize winner wins. I'm going to open up the Den of Lore website here so I can announce this correctly. And it's quite the amazing prize. And I know you're very... For somebody who has never written a book but has always wanted to, the fact that you have not only written but published 3, that is a good achievement in 3 times over. And to that extent, the respect is monumentous from this side, because it's like, well, this man's done something I could never do and I've wanted to be able to do, and he's written something that's really good. So, and I'm stalling for time by giving honest opinions on. The link's not working, so I'm trying to stretch things out here. It's better than, white screen. So yes, okay. Thank you. You get 3 signed books, hard copies. people are seeing something, which is about it's North American cryptids, and it was such a riveting book. I've given it to my mother, who has read the entire thing. She does say the second book is better, and the third book is better than that. But she still loved it. I love the imagery from it. If you want to be able to go south of the border, we're talking Mexico, we're talking the Amazon, water monsters south of the border. And you actually traveled for this one.
Yeah, I went to Peru for about week and 2 weeks, I guess.
And you didn't find any cryptids there, but you heard people who knew people who actually encountered them.
Yeah, a guide that I had in the Amazon, he didn't have first-hand knowledge, but his grandmother had supposedly seen one of the giant anacondas. I think when she was maybe I don't know how old she was when she saw it, but it was just like the tales of the giant anacondas, where the ground shakes and just a massive snake, coming from under the ground into the river there. So he told me the story that his grandmother passed down to him, and he absolutely believed it was real. So I was just delighted that he shared that with me.
And it's not only the fact that you ran into these individuals who either had these stories or heard them from second nature. You also talked to them about the ancient history of the area, and this book is filled with just tidbits of mythology and firsthand information of the places you visited. Again, if you've ever heard any Graham Hancock book that has talked about the Viracocha, and I actually remembered the name this time, or Quetzalcoatl, again, remembered the name this time. 10 episodes, I would have completely screwed up the Viracocha, but now I got it. And you actually discussed it. I remember that we had a very wonderful conversation in one of the first 3 episodes about this, and I'm okay, he's got that interest, and you've got that in there, and if you want to read about it, it's in this book, if you want, and it's going to be signed, so it's, if shit hits the fan, you'll at least have $10 million worth of, because it's priceless, but still, you got at least about $10 million worth of goods on hand. Just putting that out there. Now, I know the third book, Wild and Wonderful and Paranormal, West Virginia. It's about West Virginia. You live in Virginia proper, but West Virginia is about 20 miles away.
Yeah, I'm very close.
And the entire purpose of this contest was to be able to feed you while you were out researching for this book. And it was released while the contest was going, so you stuck with it, which is awesome. So I'm hoping there's a 4th book on the way at some point, and if you have any chapters you want to put in about the ridiculousness and the surrealness of this entire experience, go right ahead. But overall, it is the coolest because it covers everything. UFOs, Mothman, Bigfoot, you name it. There's something for everybody in there, and it is all coming from the man himself, next to where he lives, so he knows it best. And this was released originally in April. It's available on Amazon. It's available in softcover. Again, wonderful book. Thank you very much for the copy. My mother has told me to tell you, because she listens to the show, well, pretty much because we have you on here. Otherwise, so it's that's cool. So this book is in there as well. So you had all 3 Denver Michaels books signed. This is Apocalypse, monetary currency. I'm guaranteeing you want to have won this. So I'm gonna give the drum roll here. But sorry, I can't even. Let me see if I can. Yeah, drum roll. Who is the winner?
The winner, with a buffalo chicken grilled cheese sandwich, is Kevin from Nebraska.
Holy shit!
And he's held on to the number 1 spot all along. I mean, he really didn't even get that. It wasn't really that close. I mean, the sandwich was just the best. I mean, by a long shot. So there you have it.
Now, if you were to put this in sports terms, what would you give his level of domination in this contest?
I mean, he's kind of like the New England Patriots over the last decade and a half. I mean, just pretty much just kicked everybody's ass.
You know what? I'm a Patriots fan. I will get hate mail for this. I'm sorry, Tom Brady. Like, if deflate any. People hate him because he's that good, but the difference between him and, let's say, like a Sidney Crosby, who's a crying little bitch, fuck you, Sidney, and your fucking Penguins for beating Ottawa. Sorry, PK Subban. I hate PK Subban. He hit you in the head. Oh, does somebody want a ball? No, go fuck yourself. But he's a good guy. Like people hate him because he's that good. He's that good. People, everyone fucking hates him. But you can't say anything bad about him.
No, I mean, he just kicks everybody's ass. He's good looking. He's married to a supermodel. I mean, what's not to hate, The
fact that he's rich and succcersuccessful.
Yeah, he's got more money than God. I mean, yeah, you should hate him, But I mean, he's good at football.
Here for all those out there, this is my positive philosophy for the day. Instead of hating those who have what you don't, admire their strength for getting it. And then what you need to do is use it as a model for your own life. If they have a certain level of success, actually sit and think. Remove all obstacles from your life. And I'm not talking about like saying, okay, well, if I leave my husband, I can go back to school and this and that. Use the tools you have to build a strategy that works for you to make the world you want. And my even for myself, I know that I could be lazy at times, and I'm nowhere close as successful as I could be. Like I built a podcast from nothing. With shoestring and some scotch and some good friends and a lot of swear words. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, but I know I could be better. And I always want better. You control your own goddamn destiny. If you want to be Tom Brady,
Amen.
Get out there and fucking be Tom Brady. Because if you're not, guess what? No fucking excuse if that's on you. And if you didn't win this contest, you probably put peanut butter in your recipe.
That's right.
So,
or a slice of tomato.
Oh, God in heaven. You hate tomato too. Yes. Yeah. Tomato in sandwiches.
Suck.
Unless it's a BLT, which then it's awesome. But still, only acceptable sandwich for tomato at all. Now, Kevin from Nebraska, a very big supporter of the show, one of our oldest listeners, and he had to have held the number one spot for so long. And one of the just generally hardworking guy, family guy, amazing man, very dedicated to the show, and just good, honest people. And I'm like, I have to say, I was kind of cheering for him because he has holding it on for so long. I'm like, you're holding the number one spot. It's like, I kind of want you to win, but I don't want to say that. And even he was very nice to me in like chat today, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, man, kiss assing with me will not get you guaranteed win. Denver is the one judging. I don't even know who the winner is. And he's like, oh my God, like, you're so mean. I'm like, no, dude. Well, first of all, I'm joking, but still, like, yeah, like, it's in Denver's hands. I'm just here to promote. But still, Kevin is such a nice man. It's good to know that he had the dedication to stick it out every single show to find out he won. Now, Kevin, my good man, you have been on the show and you've lived through the telethon. You've lived through us when we did not have video. You lived through us when we had video but no sound, or sound was cutting out every half an hour, which I call April, or the month of darkness and Sauron, or the month of this goddamn 930E Logitech piece of shit camera that is currently sitting on my desk in a bunch of pieces. You get to interview Laird Scranton in 2 weeks here on the Den of Lore. The man himself, the man who is essentially the J.R.R. Martin of comparative cosmology. And I say that because when he writes a book, he references his own books because it's that extensive. So, amazing conversation. I know you got tons of questions. You just want to be able to hang out on air. It's up to you. We'll make it happen. And your picks on music. Now, I have to say one thing. It's guest host. So you got to make sure that it's not monetized on YouTube if you want the music played. Because if it is, and it could be kind of problematic for us. But still, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. But you at least get to help us interview, and your name will go down in infamy as having to put up with me for 3 hours. So that is this contest, which we are ending now on June 1st. Fitting day, beginning of summer. Denver, I got to say, you have been the biggest, most amazing sport. Like, if I could give you a hug from across the screen to be able to do it, it's, yeah, well, there we go. Your wife is probably thinking, what the hell have you been doing for the last 6 months, and why are you making sandwiches all the time? Has she been asking about that? I have to...
Yeah, so, I mean, she's known about the sandwich contest, and she's been very supportive. So, yeah, she's made some of them for me, and, like if we're out together on a hike or something, she'll hold the dog so I can, film the sandwich or whatever. So, she's been very supportive. Couldn't have done it without her.
Well, if she's letting you come on this show knowing that I'm on here and I can be kind of a shit disturber and she's making the sandwiches for you, I have to say you married a fantastic woman, and I have to say thank you to her for supporting you, for supporting this show and the sandwich contest, because we could not have done it without the collective effort of everybody involved, and everyone's been a fantastic sport. I have to say I'm very glad, because I want to get back to the cryptozoology reports. You have been putting out so much interesting shit on your show, like on your website, denvermichaels.net. Again, you go to denoflore.com, go to About, and go to Contributors. The link is there. There's like, you're going back in UFOs, you're talking about Bigfoot, and I know you're more of a skeptically minded guy like we are. Like, okay, this is interesting story. Let's find out if there's any proof. Yeah. Okay. There's some Satanism in there, and apparently the guy was riding a rainbow, which was farting out of his ass. Yeah, I think it's bullshit. That's kind of the idea of your level of thinking, and it fits with the show, and we love it to death. So getting back there is going to be so fun, because I know we're going to have a blast with it. I'm like, wow, like now the contest is over. I'm like, oh shit. I honestly, I kind of feel empty inside.
Kind of sad. The end of an era, my friend.
It was a 6-month contest. It was a very good contest.
Yeah. No more piano music.
So, Denver, you and I will. We're gonna get the information of the winners out there. We'll make sure everyone gets the books mailed or not. Obviously, if you live in Australia, it may take a little longer to get there, or we can figure something out again. They probably have an Australian Amazon where a copy of your book is on a shelf somewhere. We'll figure it out. But yes, now this month for June, this is going to be a really straight up contest, and I'm just going to say what the prize is right now. I have a copy, a unopened copy of a PS4 version of Final Fantasy 15. And it's going to be a straight draw for June. I got a lot of work. We got like 4 more guests to go until the end of the month, plus a bonus episode. If you own a PS4, you do not have Final Fantasy 15. If you want a copy, go to patreon.com. Support the show for $1. I will enter you into a draw for our what I'm looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to every single guest in every single show. We're having Ross Hamilton on the show at the end of the month. We cut off our episode. It was one of our best episodes ever. It was what made me believe we were going in the right direction. Episode 9. And we cut off really before we started talking about giants. Guess what? We're fucking talking about giants for the entire episode. Everything in terms of North American giants from his perspective. And he knows everything about Star Mounds and the Serpent Mound, especially in him coming from Ohio. He knows the mythology, he knows the people out there, and we are going to go really deep. So I'm going to announce that winner on that show, which let me get up here. I know it's the last Thursday. I think it's the 29th. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the 29th. It is the 29th of June. So the 29th of June, and this is going to be one of those, have you subscribed before the beginning of the show? No, then you're not eligible, because it's that close to the end of the month. But I have a copy of Final Fantasy 15. I'm going to give it away. Even if you give $1 to the show, I'll enter you into the draw. I will send you this copy of Final Fantasy 15. Now, keep in mind, if you're not in North America, you're fucked. It's North American copy. So if you are one of the 57 to 70% of our audience that lives in the States, you probably want this. It's fantastic. I've been playing it nonstop since I got it at Christmas. My wife bought 2 copies for whatever reason. I'm giving one of them away because, well, if we can do it, fantastic, and I can get you into this series that has been part of my life since I was a teenager. I just don't want it to end. I don't want this contest to end. I don't want it to end. I don't. I'm very sad.
Me too.
You got the smile on your face like, oh shit, thank God. The expectation, the drama.
It's
the
over.
Stress. It's over. I don't know. I'm feeling I'm relieved, and I kind of want to go back to like February when we first started, but that's fine. We can't do that. Time travel does not exist to the common man yet. I think we're pretty much done this. Yeah, we'll cap it off there. But I know that for all those who are winners, for this show specifically, and its contest, we'll get it out to you. Thank you for participating. It's the most ridiculous thing we have ever done, especially with this music. As I've been told, Denver's sexy southern drawl with this music is the most awesome thing on talk radio ever.
I don't know about that.
There was somebody out there, yeah, straight up. There was somebody out there of the, like, right, we have a few, a lot of viewers who are still listening. Somebody out there who was not in chat, who's been listening to this show, listens the entire show, and then listens to your voice, specifically. Don't know who it is. They were very anonymous. Just saying, just putting that out there. So,
well,
for you mysterious letter giver, thank you very much for listening, and you rest to be sure we'll have more Denver on this show as we go on. Now, Denver, you get the last opportunity for this contest to pick the exit music. What would you like to hear?
You have Spellbound?
Of course I do. It was our only exit music for like 4 months. And now it's like we have all this exit music, and I don't know any of it. It's... There we go.
There it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Den of Lore. You know how we roll. We roll because we have fun, and we drink a lot of scotch. We learn some really cool shit. I learned some really cool shit tonight, courtesy of John Michael Greer, who taught me a lot about... Like, fuck, you know, I think I'm going to have like a final lesson at the end of each show. Like, what did I learn? I learned that no matter what your political affiliation is, or what you believe in, that even if I still love you as a person, there is some dark magic that's actually going to come in and try and manipulate your brain to turn you into a bad decision-making machine, apparently. That and girl guides are the head of the Illuminati. And if you want to fence, you need to be wearing pantaloons. Something like that. And, apparently people love Denver Michaels' voice. Well, I do, personally, but that's just me. He's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Den of Lore, episode 40. Now, stick around. If you're still on the show, I'm going to say this much. I haven't done a hangover in 2 weeks. Fuck it, we're doing a hangover call-in show after this show. So if you want to ask me questions about the show, you give me 10 minutes, I'll be back on here. We're going to do a live interactive talk about the show, the subject, what you guys want to hear. You see the information up. Let me just get Denver. I'm going to move Denver over here. Denver, I'm moving you over to my right side screen. You see this right here where it says Den of Lore? Okay. Yeah, add this right here to your Skype contact, or you can call in directly via telephone. If you are in North America, it is a U.S. East Coast telephone number. Subscribe, get your notifications. You'll know when we come on air, and we will have a good, fun time. This is Chris George Zuger signing off for the Den of Lore. Get ready for the hangover. I just need to go have a little bite to eat, and we'll have some fun. So if you're ready to go, we're good to go for you. Ladies and gentlemen,